Okay, ready, action. This is the October 9th closed session of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. The time is approximately 10 after 6. Are there any members of the public who want to make a comment? No members of the public here except for an attorney who's not the Kensington public.
And he belongs to us.
Yes. Well, we shouldn't put it quite that way. So I'll take roll call at this time. I'm Glenn Welsh, President of the Board, and Director Toombs.
Present.
And Director Lipscomb.
Here.
Director Gillette has told us she'll be late, and so we're going to get a closed session now. Hopefully she'll show up shortly when we do. And Director Lloyd is not present. He's still recovering from his illness. And with that, we will close and go into closed session.
We just did on all the numbers.
Thank you, Glenn.
Welcome to the October 9th, 2014 meeting of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. I'm Glenn Welsh, the Board President, and this time we'll take roll call. Director Toom.
Present.
Director Gillette.
Present.
And Director Lipscomb.
I'm here.
Director Lloyd is not going to be able to attend tonight. He's still recovering from his illness, and we wish him a speedy recovery. Hopefully we'll see him next time. I'll report out before we begin on the closed session we just concluded. We met with legal counsel, item 1, and gave appropriate guidance to the attorney on the matter we discussed, Schwartzburg versus Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. Item 2, in the conference with labor negotiators, no action was taken. And item 3, we did not get to discuss any of those issues. So that's the report out on the closed session. And we will now entertain any general comments from the public on topics that we're not going to get into later on tonight, because the public will be allowed to comment on them when those topics come up.
Speak up.
And you about got to kiss the microphone. It's hard to hear.
So, good evening, board.
It's on.
It's not on.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it is. Well, I'll just try to talk up.
All you have to do is get really close to the mic. See like I'm doing?
Hello?
There you go. You can hear yourself when you're there.
Okay. Thank you. I came to urge the board to settle in the writ petition case, make a speedy settlement to save the taxpayers of Kensington money. As you may know, the board both won and lost on appeal. It also lost as to the board opening the door should litigation go on for a countersuit, which is also the one's statutes. Nobody wants to do that, and nobody wants this, I think, to drag on. It's already cost allegedly $250,000, and if the board pursues trying to collect a huge amount of money out of the petitioners, it's very likely to take several more years of motions and counter motions and discoveries and objections and another $250,000, and the board may lose. The board may not get a penny. It's really unknown. There's a lot of, arguments that can be made on all sides. I have offered the board a settlement, including giving the afford money, which I hope they will consider. But in general, I feel that we should all just be aware that it could drag on a very long time and cost a lot more money to what avail. So I also urge the incoming board, hopefully will support a reasonable and speedy settlement of this case. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for the comment.
My name is Peter Liddell. I'm with the Kensington Public Safety Council. First and most importantly, I'd like to thank the Girl Scouts for bringing cookies. They're really good. If you haven't tried them, they're in the back. Secondly, I'd like to just announce a presentation we will be having on Thursday, November 6th. It's on fraud, scams, and identity theft. All those things are happening in Kensington just like everywhere else. This is a growing concern as seniors, and a lot of seniors on this Kensington, like me, tend to be more trusting and therefore find target for these crimes. So we'll host a presentation in which we'll have Verna Haas of the Common Costa Senior Legal Services. They provide free or low-cost legal service to seniors who can afford it, and they have good experience with this. She'll be coming to talk about what you can expect to hear on the other end of your phone sometimes, and why not pay attention. In addition, we'll have our very own Linda Lipscomb, who will be discussing things to be aware of regarding some sorts of real estate frauds. So we may have some additional speakers as well. We're still working on that, but we hope that many of you, all of you, will come and hear this very important, interesting talk. Yes?
What time?
It will be at 7 p.m. Thank you.
7 p.m. here, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, members of the board and the Kensington community. We are 4 of the 10 girls in Girl Scout Troop 32222 who have been meeting here at the community center since we were in kindergarten 7 years ago. We're here tonight to say thank you to the KPPCSD for letting us put in a pollinator garden and a fairy house on the community center grounds right out the door. With your help, we were able to do this project in order to earn our Bronze Award. The Bronze Award is the highest honor that Girl Scouts can achieve when they are at the junior level, which we were last year.
To earn the Bronze Award, a troop has to identify a project that can benefit the community, get permission to do the project if it's on public land, raise money, get supplies, do the project, then thank the people who submitted. To choose our project, we walked around the Kensington Park and made notes about the things that we could do to improve it, and surveyed the people who were at the park about what they thought it needed. We decided that a pollinator garden would be a good idea because it would make our park prettier, and it could encourage people to plant flowers that butterflies and other pollinators like. We asked Chief Carmen if we could use the land and the irrigation system in front of the community center for our gardens. He said yes.
To learn about butterfly-friendly plants, our troop went to Flowerland Nursery. We learned that butterflies like plants that have a wide, flat surface to land on and with short flower tubes. Red, yellow, orange, pink, and purple blossoms are best. And we also learned to choose a place with some sun and don't use pesticides. Next, we wrote asking for donations of flowers and supplies. 6 nurseries and 2 hardware stores gave us donations worth more than $200. We painted lots of signs to identify the plants, and then
We planted the garden on a rainy day last March. We also made a fairy house just for the fun of it. Some things didn't work so well. The little signs identifying the plants got kicked around, and some of the flowers got picked. But people really seemed to like the fairy house. You could tell how much it was used by seeing all the stuff that people have added to it. And we hope that the big green sign and the garden helps people think about how important it is to plant flowers that butterflies and other pollinators like. We could not have done this without the support of the KPPCSD. We appreciate your help and hope to do more projects in the Kensington community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful little bit of education. I say I'm having learned something, or sit having learned
But
something.
wait,
right
aren't
now.
pollinators also bees? Oh, I'm scared of bees.
So
And
you,
I hope you all understood that the garden is right out there, right around on the semicircle there. And you're welcome to check out the fairy house on a regular basis. All the little things inside seem to change when the children or fairies visit it. But thank you so much to Carmen and the district for allowing our troop to use this property.
just one little question. Is there going to be a part 2 to this project?
We'll see.
Um,
Oh, so you want us to take on the... Sure.
Actually, I was thinking Peter Liddell might be interested in talking to you folks about the fire prevention work we're trying to do here. We've been wanting to get some younger folks involved in that, so perhaps we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bring cookies again.
They want you to buy the cookies.
I know, I checked, not for everyone.
Hello, my name is Lisa Corona. I'm a Kensington resident, and I'm also on the KIC board, Kensington Improvement Club. I would just like to remind folks that this Saturday, in this room, starting at 9:30, there'll be a KIC annual meeting, which includes dignitaries such as Harmon, as well as Nina Harmon from Nina.
The other board.
Yeah, from the Fire Protection District Board, as well as Marty Westby from KCC will be giving brief presentations. And at 10:30, I want to be sure everybody knows we are sponsoring with KPOA a forum for all the candidates running for the district. There'll be an opportunity to meet the candidates, to hear from them. We hope everybody is able to attend, spread the word. At 10:30, they'll be able to meet the 8 candidates who are running for the district board, and hopefully get a lot of information about those folks. So please join us on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment? Okay, I'll ask board members if they'd like to comment, starting with Chuck.
No comments tonight, thank you.
None for
Linda?
me. None for me.
Wow, clean sweep. Well, all I'm going to say is the efforts to remove fuel for potential wildfires continues, thanks to the efforts of people like Peter Liddell and Katie Luck, who are here, Charlie Danielson, and of course Gretchen is still filling. And let's see, who else has been out there? Ray Barraza, are you here tonight? Yes, Ray's been pitching in.
Lisa's been out there.
Excellent. Lisa Corona. Well, I haven't been there myself that much. But I am getting the dust today.
Thank you very much. We filled it today.
Already? Very good. We have a new location, so it's not such an eyesore anymore. So, well, we'll get it emptied and we'll get another one out there. And I just want to remind everybody that the fire danger continues to increase as the drought continues, and this is very important work being done. So thanks again for your efforts. Okay, let's see. We now have the consent calendar. Does anybody want to... Did you have a comment?
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Carl Cruiser. I'm asking that item C be taken off the consent calendar. And if we are willing to do that, I would like to ask some questions on 401, 506, 521A, 521B, and 530.
I'm sorry, could you say those again real quick?
401, 506, 521, 5A, 521B, and 530.
Impressive that you did that without notes.
I also think that as long as we spend more money than we have revenues, the financials ought not to be on a consent calendar. I will ask that to be taken on every month if we have it on a consent calendar. So if you don't want to listen to me, take it off the consent calendar.
We always like to listen to you,
That's
Carl.
right. We love you.
Couldn't live without it.
Right.
Okay, it's off the consent calendar.
Before you get to that, did the staff have any comments they wanted to make? I think you passed up about
Oh,
it.
I apologize, go ahead. Yeah, we have some important ones, I think.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know that maybe you haven't heard or didn't see what was going on Tuesday. Anybody curious about Tuesday?
Yeah.
Well, what happened on Tuesday, I'm going to give you the brief version. I won't read you the press release. But at about 11:30 Tuesday morning, Officer Chris Turner was up on lake doing regular patrol, and he saw a suspicious vehicle coming from the dead end of the lake toward him. So he kind of slowed down, looked at the vehicle, the two occupants in the vehicle kind of looked at him, and he kind of knew that they weren't from Kensington. So as they drove by, they kind of acknowledged each other, and he looked at the license plate, and he saw that the tab was missing. So he started to turn around and get in behind the vehicle, and the vehicle sped off. He wasn't in a pursuit, but he could tell that something was up because the vehicle, that's a clue in our job. When the vehicle speeds away from you, that's a clue. So he went in the area and looked at the vehicle, and he recovered the vehicle on, how do you pronounce it? Wellesley? That's the way I pronounce it. Wellesley. And what had happened is the driver lost control, jumped the sidewalk, and then the driver, the male driver, and the female passenger had exited the vehicle and took off. We got the vehicle, he ran it. It turned out to be a stolen vehicle. In the car, he found a handgun, burglary tools, and stolen property. So El Cerrito came up along with their dog, and that's where the helicopter came into play. We tried to set up a perimeter to look for the two suspects. And after about 2 hours of searching, we were unable to locate them. So we cleared the scene, we went back to the station. Within about 3:45,
Yes.
we had a call from a citizen that said there were two suspicious people walking along the Arlington towards Sunset. And the description matched the description of the two people we were looking at earlier. So we all went running out, and it's kind of a funny story, but I was in the bathroom, and everybody kind of ran out, and I kind of knew something was going on. But it was a good thing, because when I got out of the bathroom and I went running out with them up the street, I happened to see the female suspect running across Arlington down Sunset. So I was able to take her into custody quick.
Did you run?
He did run.
Of course. It's the police chief run. You do an accelerator go. Anyway, so I took her into custody, and then we set up a perimeter, because what had happened when I was risking my life chasing the female, Keith Barrow and Eric Stegman were chasing the male suspect. And I don't know how he got away from me, but he did. So we set up another perimeter in the area of Arlington, Westminster, and York. And we knew we had the suspect contained, so we called up the dog unit from El Cerrito, and with the assistance of El Cerrito, we had the perimeter set, and we started an area search in this perimeter area. And we had cleared several houses. I just want to make my appeal. For those of you who read our monthly report, one of the things we plead with when we do is lock your doors. So what happens, not only is that a good safety measure for when you're away from the house, your door's unlocked, it makes it easier for a burglar to come in. If we're searching for a wanted suspect, the first thing that these people usually do would look for an open door type thing. So during our little search I think our initial search of 6 residences, 4 were found to be unlocked. And we had to go and clear them. And that takes a lot of time, it's dangerous and everything else. So please lock your door. Anyway, back to my story. So we clear several houses, and we're convinced that we had this thing locked down immediately. We know the suspect was contained in one of these areas, hiding somewhere. And one of the officers went back to a house on York Street and noticed that after we cleared it from the open door, searched the house, the suspect wasn't located, cleared it, We left the door unlocked. But now the door was locked from the inside via chain. There was no answer at the door. In our line of work, that's called a clue. So we went back, forced the door, unfortunately, and sent the dog in. And we gave the standard announcement. Anytime you use the dog, you have to give the announcement, we're about to use a canine. Funny thing, the suspect came out from hiding. He was hiding in this person's attic, and he was taken into custody. And a little bit about the two suspects. The male suspect, who is kind of transient of Hayward, was a parolee at large. And what that basically means is a person who's been paroled from prison. However, he failed to maintain his parolee status and was wanted for the violation. So he was taken into custody, and then we have a bunch of charges on him. The female was also wanted on a warrant, on a weapons warrant, of all things. And, I'm sorry?
Home invasion.
She had a home invasion? Okay. So a home invasion warrant. So the good news is 2 very dangerous people were taken off the street, and everything worked out for the best. And like I say, please lock your doors. And I think that's all I'll say about that.
We have a couple of questions for you, Chief. Go ahead.
I have a question. So I was there watching the El Cerrito units roll up Coventry, and then watched as the helicopter circled. And so my question is, how would we be alerted? I mean, I guess I always take my dog for a walk that time of day, so I thought I'll just go opposite from where the helicopter is. But then I thought maybe I should have done that. So I guess my question is this, Chief: would we have gotten some kind of phone blast to citizens to stay inside, or would the Contra Costa County emergency warning system been invoked, or should we just use common sense?
Common sense.
Okay.
We only use that county warning system if life-threatening emergency.
Okay.
And at that time, we didn't even have a visual of the suspect at that time we're talking about.
Right.
And to be honest about it, it's really hard to get that warning out because we're a small department. The person who would actually set up that type of warning would have been me. And it's kind of funny, we talk about cell phone towers and stuff. While I was on a perimeter trying to secure the suspect when we did the search, I was trying to contact the board and let them know what was going on. However, after I was texting it, whatever, it wouldn't send because I didn't have cell service in the area. That's a little
Right.
Anyway, the best thing is to use common sense. One of the things that maybe I will ask this, one of the hardest things, I understand that citizens have, the need to know and they're curious, but one of the hardest things for us is people coming up when we're actually involved in a very active situation and asking us questions. Like, oh, I live on, half a mile away. What's going on? We're kind of tied up. We'd love to be able to sit there and answer those questions, but at the time, we're just kind of tied up. But if there was a life-threatening thing, if we felt people should stay in their homes, whatever, that would have activated it. So,
I was at the school picking up my child and from an after-school activity, and the principal announced a lockdown. And so the teachers that were there brought the students in, closed all the doors. The neighborhood preschool, they got all their students in. And I was in the classroom with one of the teachers, and we never got notified that the lockdown was over from the principal. But my main concern actually was the library and the playground, the park over here, where there are a lot of kids that come down during, they're waiting for their parents to pick them up, they're playing at the park. So is there some sort of protocol to let the library know that there's a lockdown, like the school had this notice of a lockdown? Is there any way to address all the children and CASA of all their students that they're responsible for?
Well, let me clarify some of your inaccurate facts there. Okay, first of all, what happened with the school and the lockdown? We never asked for the lockdown of the school. I didn't feel that there was any danger there. At the time we were doing the second scene, like I said, we actually were pretty convinced we had the suspect in an interior perimeter that was pretty close, and it was it's almost a quarter mile away from the school. Wasn't near the library, wasn't near the park. The school went into lockdown, and I've been working with Judy Sanders because of that. And what had happened, the first I heard of the lockdown is our dispatchers came over here and asked, the school wants to know if we can lift the lockdown. And I wasn't with my watch commander at the time, but I didn't call for it, so I didn't know if he did. And then when he said, well, if they're on lockdown, leave it that way, and I said, no, there's no reason for the lockdown lifted. Judy wasn't actually at the school that day. She was off-site at a meeting. And we kind of did our own little investigation. And what had happened, a concerned parent had called the school. A school staff member had called dispatch. And the dispatcher made a mistake and basically said, well, if you're on lockdown, stay that way. She kind of overstepped her authority there. That's not what's supposed to happen. So I've been working with Judy, and we've come up with a little bit of a better plan of call of action to address your thing about the library and the park and all that other kind of stuff. Like I said, if at any point that I felt there was any danger in another area or another area should have been cleared or locked down, whatever, we would have taken those steps. However, I was very confident that we got there so fast, and our two officers were actually chasing the suspect, that we knew what area he was hiding in, so there was never any concern on my part of surrounding areas. Had there been, and we've actually had times where we've actually gone to the library, let them know what's going on. We've gone to KSEP, gone to the Building E, and we've actually, on one other occasion since I've been here, the only other time the school was locked down was on an incident that occurred at the residence next door to the school. So I actually went in and told Judy, lock it down until we find, this individual, or we know the area is clear. So I hope that kind of answers your question. The problem is, it goes back to that same thing. Everybody wants to know information, and I'll try to get it out there as soon as I can. But the stuff that I would definitely get out over like the emergency warning system is if there was a life-threatening emergency. And that would be the case we would use it. However, in this particular case, there was really no need to it.
Have you considered employing Nixle, which is a text-based notification system that some East Bay jurisdictions are using, where you'll have to subscribe to it using your phone number, you get a text that gives you the warning?
Right, that's something that's we're considering talking about. It comes down to the same thing, and it's kind of if we were into the system and we were able to use it, actually it's almost try to word this right, but to find the time to actually do all that and get it out there, the event's kind of over. But that's something that we're looking at now. We've talked about it, so it's just a lot of times that kind of has a reverse effect and makes things worse, because now, like you have a cell phone, you notify in San Francisco that we have an event somewhere in Kensington, then that generates even more phone calls from people that really, it just makes it more difficult for us. So I mean, it's kind of a two-edged sword, but it's something we are looking at and considering. Hi.
Several months ago in the police report, I think it was in the sergeant's report for one of the teams, officer or corporal Stegman, I'm not sure his rank, made a passionate plea for people to lock their doors. I wonder if many people read the entire police report to find that out. In the Outlook, there's a section that's called significant events, just a synopsis of one. But I wonder if the police department, in cases like this, couldn't put something specifically in the Outlook to say, here's an example of why you should lock your doors.
Well, every month we have plenty of examples of why people should lock their doors, unfortunately. And I'll tell you kind of an aside, kind of an irritating story, funny story, whatever. One day we were investigating a residential burglary right on the next street over. And it was a righteous burglary. It was a window smash. People went in and ransacked the house, whatever. And within minutes, we got a second call of an alarm going off. So we rolled in there thinking it was possibly related to the first burglary. Well, we get there and we talked with the neighbors. The neighbors said, well, oh no, that was us that set off the alarm. Their dog got out and we let the dog back in. When we did that, the alarm went off. And they went on to tell us that the people that the house where the alarm was going off on, they were burglarized like a year ago. And that's why they got the burglar alarm. However, we found every door in the house unlocked. That's how the dog got out. So they were a victim of a burglary a year ago. They went out and got an alarm system, but they leave their doors unlocked. I hear what you're saying, and it's one of the things we keep preaching. Please lock your doors. Please secure your property. I don't know how to get the word out anymore. Than every public meeting we go to, we ask people to lock your doors. It's in the monthly report. We try. Just lock your doors.
All right. Thank you all for the questions, and thank you for the answers, Chief. I think, again, we've learned a little bit. Any other staff comments? Okay. So we have item C removed from the consent calendar. Any others? Okay. Let's talk about item C.
Carl, did you want to walk us through this since you're the one who raised the issue?
401, I am not sure that 401 was actually covered by your comments in the general manager's report. Did that have to do with it? Because the revenues on 401 are shorter than what they should be. I saw your comments on the general manager's report about the 1% increase in real estate taxes.
That has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Remember last meeting when we talked about this exact same thing? At the beginning of the fiscal year, the county gives us a credit on what they think that we'll be collecting. And that's what that's actually not the cash we collected, that's the credit from the county. As we go through the fiscal year and the county makes their drops, as you guys pay your taxes, the county then credits our account, and that's when they'll include the rest of the tax as reflected.
When you have a budget of 1.41 and you have actual revenue of 1.26 and you're short $130,000 year to date.
I think what he's saying, Carl, is that's not the actual collections. That's the credit, and it's an estimate of what we're going to get.
That's just the credit the county gives us so we can, function until they actually collect the taxes for us.
Carl, it's a provisional figure. It's a placeholder of what they're expecting.
I understand that, but if you have an annual budget and a year-to-date budget, the year-to-date budget ought to match approximately what the actual revenues are projected. You're shaking your head. I'm going to move to the next item. Okay. Chief, overtime. We had...
It's 506, right?
506. We had this huge amount of overtime the previous month. And we used 30-some% within a month. I would assume that we would make an effort to control overtime the month following a month when we have huge overtimes. You and I talked about it before and we don't agree to it, but I have to make my statement to feel good.
Well, can I make one?
Absolutely.
Okay, so overtime budgeted for the month was $375, or $7,500. $37.50, right?
Yeah.
Our overtime was, what was it, $3,900?
Yes.
So we hit our budgeted projection. So it was kind of a normal month.
Chief, you should have saved something because you used too much the previous month.
Well, unfortunately, this isn't like we're making donuts. We go to court. We have people call in sick. It's kind of we do our best, and we did get it down from, what was it last month, something like 20,000 because of some really super intense events we had to take care of.
Chief, you only have a dozen people. There are businesses that have a couple of hundred people, and they cover overtime. I'll move on the good side, on number...
Is there a good side?
Yeah, 521A and 522B. Is this a question of billing, or are we actually that much on the positive? See, we had year to date 63,000 and 45,000, and we actually spent 44,000 and 36,000.
Yeah, that's just the billing.
It's just the billing.
Yeah.
So I ought not to build up my home.
Yeah, take back your congratulations.
Okay, but I'm very curious about 5:30. That looks like,
Carl, can I ask a question?
yes.
Didn't you call 521T as one of the questions, or R?
Oh, I beg your pardon, yes, it's R.
I just wanted to make sure you didn't
Okay,
miss
yeah. That gives you an idea about my minimum wage. I looked at that earlier today and then I forgot what the letter was, you know. But it's a retirement pay, yes. Anyway, I'm curious about 5:30, Chief.
Okay, so our workers' comp gets paid once a year. So the 25,000 was our payment for the workers' comp, or is it quarterly now?
It's quarterly.
Okay, so that was our first quarter payment. That's awful high.
It's 2 quarters.
2 quarters. Okay. So we're anticipating workers' comp to be about 50,000 for the year, and we paid the first 2 quarters 25,000. I don't know.
Did that have anything to do with the change in modification or what?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, thank you. It's always nice to have a discussion with you every month.
I get to look forward to the finance committee.
Can't live without it.
It's like a conference.
Okay, then that discussion having been had, do I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
I move we adopt the consent calendar.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Okay, Dr. Harder, I think you're up next.
I'll be back.
Thank you. You may want to turn around.
Should I maybe use the microphone? I think it would be helpful. I'm just delighted to be here tonight to give you a little update on where we are in West Contra Costa Unified School District. What we're really out to do is to create futures that wouldn't happen without us, and we're very dedicated to the notion that all of our students leave high school, first of all, graduate from high school, and then graduate from high school prepared for college and career. As we look at the class of 2014, we had tremendous success with them last year. And we have also put together a strategic plan that really will guide us to the future to help all those students go on to be successful in terms of college and career as they go forward. We spent about 10 months in 2013 coming up with these 6 key priorities. And then the state adopted a new sort of super priority for us and helped us, I'm sorry, I got something out of order here. I thought this was coming up next. We have about 500 students at Contra Costa College, about 140 at Diablo Valley, and 125 in Berkeley City out of this class of class 2014. And we sent students off to 15 out of the 23 Cal State University campuses, and then all 10 of the UC campuses, including 75 of our graduates off to UC Berkeley this year. And then a smattering of students off to the highly selected colleges and universities. And I hope you've heard about the Ivy League Connection, which is something that we do every summer for about 40 students and send them off to various schools in the summer. It's all privately funded. And it really helps our students see that there's a chance to go somewhere else besides UC Berkeley, although we think UC Berkeley is a pretty terrific choice as well. So students get the idea that they can go to these, and for our low-income students, it's often less expensive for them to go to an Ivy League campus than it is to go to a UC Berkeley campus, because the scholarship opportunities for our low-income students are so much better there. So it's a great option for our students as well. Well, one of the things that we do to really ramp up our college and careers is to make sure the teacher expectations are high. We did a survey with our students last year, 4th and 6th grade, as well as our middle school students. And about 80% of them said that the teachers expected them to go on to college after high school, which we think is a good thing for young people to stay and understand. We've also worked very hard to increase the number of our students who take college-level courses in high school, the advanced placement exams. The 2 years that we went down here, we're really at the heart of the recession. We had to reduce the number of sections that we offered, and over the last couple of years, we're heading back in the right direction again. We're really pleased that we're able to do that. This year, we have 19 advanced placement courses offered among our high schools. We have 151 sections and about 3,100 students in those courses this year, which is a record for us. So we're very happy to see that the notion about college and career is very strong for us. Overall, our population is about 51% Latino, about 20% African American, about 12% Asian, and 12% white, about 6% Filipino among all of our students. We have about 9,300 English language learners in the district, with Spanish being the predominant language. You can see from this circle graph about 80-some%, 82% speak Spanish. But I was surprised to pull the data to find out that Filipino and Arabic were the next three down in terms of the languages that we have, and they'd be represented in these parts of the pie right there. So there's a significant number of students who are bringing lots and lots of languages to us in West Contra Costa. We have about 4,100 special needs students. They range from students who have a speech impairment all the way to students who are severely and profoundly disabled. And we have about 825 preschoolers this year with 3 and 4-year-olds in our school. And then we serve about 10,700 adults in our adult education program, mainly in English as a second language, adult basic education, and then a number of programs that we have for senior citizens and fee-based courses as well. Local control funding formula is probably the best thing that's ever happened in West Contra Costa. This is what Governor Brown and the legislature pushed through in 2013. And what it's going to do is the maroon slide just indicates the increase that we expect to get just as a result of our base funding. And now we're at a place now where in the state of California, students are funded at the same base level across the state. We used to have this crazy formula where students at Berkeley got a lot more than students at West Contra Costa did, and that's all over now, and we're really happy to see that. But what's really changed is this notion about supplemental and concentration grants, and those are grants that we receive, or all districts receive, based on two factors. One is the number of low-income and English language learners that they have in the district, as well as the proportion of those students who are above 55%. And since we're up about 75% of our students are either low-income or English language learners, we're going to see this little amount of money grow. And so last year was about $12 million, this year is about $24, and it grows up to $37 million by 16-17, and then on up from there. And that's really going to help us concentrate funds on the kids who need it most, because we know that the kids from poverty need a lot more services and support than kids from well-to as they go through school. Our bond program has done very well for us. This is a picture of from the De Anza High School standing at the walkway between the classroom building and the gym. And the nice thing about De Anza High School is people quit complaining about how lavish El Cerrito High School has been. And one thing that we know, we're in the process now of building a new Pinole Valley High School, and we'll quit talking about how lavish De Anza is when Pinole Valley High School comes on. People like new schools, and they're very nice. We're very happy to have them. We just moved the students into temporary campus at Pinole Valley High School, so we're starting construction out there for a new high school. And then up in Hercules, we moved students into Ohlone this year. We have a number of projects going on, including Cormazzo in El Cerrito, Dompers in leadership in Richmond, Coronado in Richmond, the Richmond Swim Center at Kennedy High School, the El Cerrito High School Stadium, and a new classroom building out on Talbot, and a number of other programs that we have as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about the Securities and Exchange Commission investigation you probably read about in the Contra Costa Times. We're taking this very seriously. We have provided them with a couple of pallet loads of documents so far. Really, there hasn't been any accusation of any wrongdoing. It looks more to us like an audit than an investigation. And we've had a hard time figuring out what's behind it. But we're going to fully cooperate with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And two things I know for sure. One is that at the end of all this, we're going to find some things that we could have improved on. And two is that I know that we're going to make those improvements in terms of our processes. And that's what we find out. We have lots of oversight in the school district, everything from Contra Costa County to the California Department of Education, Department of State Architect, and so on and so forth. And so we've had a number of investigations or audits, and we'll respond and we'll make the corrections that we have to make when the Securities and Exchange Commission completes that. The mantra out of our strategic plan has been to focus on the whole child and the whole community, and that's really what we're out to do. And with the new state funding formula comes this local control accountability plan. And that's, I kind of got ahead of myself with the strategic plan because we kind of pulled those two things together into this new accountability plan. This is our accountability committee. It consists of parents, and I think Carolyn Day Flowers is up there. You probably know her. She's a Kensington resident. She's a part of this committee as well as students who are part of this. We ended up with 14 goals that came out of this, 49 measures where we're actually looking at data and charting our progress over time, and then 47 actions and services. And key among the things that we're doing are the Common Core State Standards, which is, if you think about it, colleges and universities have been complaining for years that our students, even though we've been sending a large number of them on to colleges, aren't fully prepared for college. And the notion of the Common Core State Standards is just to make sure that they have the level of rigor, the level of challenge in high school that they need to be really successful when they go on to college and university. It really starts out with building strong core content knowledge in all the content areas. And it really asks us to improve achievement for all of our students as we go through. Not just for our students who are the most challenged, but to improve achievement for all of them. And that's why we're so interested in our advanced placement program, is to make sure that our highest achieving students still get additional challenges as they go through school. The key part of the local control funding formula really is about accelerating learning increases for English language learners and low-income students. And the Kennedy High School mock trial team is a great example of kids who are, 4 years ago we didn't even have it at all, and now they're up competitive with all the schools throughout the county who have had mock trial for a number of years. It's really great to see that our kids can step up to the challenge and do well. Family involvement is really important to us, and we do lots to make sure that we involve our families from all kinds of events that we have at night, and we have lots of ways in which we're really doing a better job of engaging our students and improving the climate in our schools. When I got to West Contra Costa, we expelled, the first year I was here, almost 300 students. In the last 2 years, we've had none. It's really been great to see our level of suspensions is way down, and the level of misbehavior has gone way down in our school district. And we credit that to lots of things along the way. But really investing in the whole child is a big part of that, to really recognize that it isn't just discipline we're dealing with. It's really about changing students' orientation and culture as they go through. As we think about this, we brought on health centers in all of our high schools. We're the only district in Northern California that has a health center in each of our high schools. It's really helped us improve our attendance, as well as to provide lots and lots of services, mental health services for kids and youth, as well as physical health services. But what we've also done is to gone about now, since the recession is done, to go back about expanding our visual and performing arts programs, and we're really excited about that. The return to elementary instrumental music last year, and to see that keep on going this year. Safety in school climate is really important to everything that we do, and we use a number of different things. Restorative practices, we really look at, instead of focusing on behaviors, really focusing on students really taking responsibility for the mistakes that they've made and going to work on restoring the community. Now, it doesn't always work, and not all students are able to do that, but when they are, it really makes a difference. Focusing on celebrating academics, school pride, and then really working on anti-bullying is really a big thing. Because bullying is just sort of endemic, and it's always below the surface. And what we have to do is we have to lead and make sure that students want to make those kinds of changes. We're very happy with our partnerships with all the police agencies. It's just great to know that we have a great partnership up here with Kensington Police as well, and improvements to our school safety too. When you think about innovation, I've got a picture here of the Richmond High School robotics team, just because they compete with all these schools from private and high wealth areas and do very well. They design the robot, they build it, they maintain it, and they compete with it. And it's just great to see. If you ever get a chance to go to one of these competitions, it will really open your eyes to what our students are able to do. We're moving to technology where we move on to one-to-one computing, and we're going to ease that in over the next 3 years. And so it's not going to lump all at once, but lots of training for teachers. And we hope to move beyond the textbook. Is one of my goals. So we now have our students carrying around 25 pounds of textbooks in their book bags. One-on-one has gone over very well with our youngest students as well as with our older students as well. I guess what I would say about, we did a survey of all high school students last year, and what we saw was that my school, there's a teacher adult who really cares about me. About 87% of our students are saying that's true both at the middle school and the high school level, and that's really terrific. Now I'm concerned about the 13% at both levels who don't, but this is really a terrific number because our kids go away from school showing that there is somebody they connect with and somebody that really, really cares about them. So I just want to say that's all about having great teachers and great programs, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you tonight. I'll be happy to answer your questions. Yes, sir.
What's going to happen to the property on Mosier?
The property on Mosier, the old Portland building that now is sort of in green space. We're going to use the lower level portion of that property. Right now, Korematsu Middle School is there in temporary quarters. In January 2016, they're going to move into the new school in the old Castro building. And then we're going to move Fairmont Elementary into that temporary quarters there for at least 2 years after that while we renovate Fairmont Elementary. And then we want to work with the city of El Cerrito in terms of how we can best use that in a way for the community, to serve the community. There's not much green space in El Cerrito, and my thought is that we'll work out a partnership with the city around the use of that property.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What is the construction project that's going on in El Cerrito High School?
Right now, it's the stadium project. When we rebuilt the high school, we didn't have plans and funding for the stadium project, and now the stadium's underway right now. The interesting thing about it, it's one of those things because it's such a small space, it really takes a lot of resources in terms of shoring up the hillside on both sides, and that's the wall you see if you drive by there. That's the hillside wall, so we can actually have a full track there for that school. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, as a person who was on the first school closure committee so many years ago, I am aware of the miserable conditions so many schools, and I commend you and the board for upgrading them. But the criticism that I have seen in the paper mostly is that even so, the building, the rebuilding, is not budget driven, but rather is full of additions and full of pet projects that are added to the budget, and as a result, most of the building goes way over budget.
Well, what we have in West Contra Costa, this will be a short answer to a very long and complicated subject. But what we've done in West Contra Costa is we've developed a set of standards to which we're going to build our schools to. And the board has made a commitment to build schools to that standard so that every student is going to come into a school that's at the same standard as well. And I think that 50 or 75 years from now, when our students and our communities are still using those schools, I think when someone goes into the theater at El Cerrito High School, they're going to say, who had the vision to do this? Because it is really a terrific place, and it's going to serve our community for a long time. And our board has always been into what's this going to look like in the long view. Let's build with quality, because a lot of the buildings that we replaced were just sort of thrown up in the 50s and 60s when they were in a big hurry, and they didn't last as long as what we hoped to do. And so by building the standards, I think the board is really committed to having high-quality schools that will last for a long time.
But was the standard the budget, or was the standard additions to the budget?
Well, the standard becomes the standards that we build, to which we build our schools. And so there's a standards committee that updates our standards every other year. And then what happens when the architect finds out that the architect's been selected to do a particular school, then they're asked to design to that standard. There aren't a lot of additions that happen once the design is put together. Certainly there are change orders that come along the way and things that happen, but that has not been what has driven our costs up, or just simply the costs of building a school as they increase over time in terms of materials. For example, after the tsunami in Japan, all of a sudden our materials prices went up beyond what we had expected, and so there are budget additions that were added for things like that. Yes?
So what's the percentage of money that's spent on improving academics versus all this building and so on?
Well, we have about a $300 million budget in terms of our academics, and we have been spending about somewhere between $60 and $80 million a year on our construction program.
Carl, could you do that math for me?
Well, thank you so much for having me here tonight. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Hart. That's a reason to have hope about our school system. Some very impressive stuff. Okay, that brings us to item 2, a report on the status of our lease contract negotiations. Chuck or Pat, would you like to lead off?
Actually, I'll take this on here. We've been negotiating back and forth with the Police Officers Association. We submitted a draft contract to them last week. They didn't get back to us until this afternoon. We had actually both hoped to have a contract to present tonight to the public with a follow-up in 30 days. We don't have that, unfortunately. What we do have is a revised version of our agreement, which we're going to provide to our attorneys for a review. And hopefully at the next meeting we'll have a final contract we can discuss with the public and also explain our reasoning behind what we're asking for from the police officers and what we're asking for of the public. So that's our report.
It wasn't bad. There's a lot of talk going on about the negotiations, and I just want to make it clear that there are a lot of restrictions on what you can and can't do with respect to collective bargaining and benefits and all those kinds of issues. So for those of you who are seeing fit to comment on that, you might want to check out what some of those restrictions are before you make wild comments about what we do or don't do. We'll try to explain that next session, in our next meeting, so that people have a good working understanding. But it's not as if you start from ground zero every time when you're negotiating contracts. We're confident that the police and the district are working together to get a contract that will be both fair to the officers who serve our community well and fair to the district in terms of maintaining our fiscal responsibilities that we have for the district.
Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, thank you, both of you, for the report. Okay, so we come to item 3, and this is this follows up on the discussions we've been having about whether to extend our relationship with Bayview Refuse and Recycling or to proceed with the RFP. At the last meeting, we voted on a resolution to move forward with, or consider moving forward with Bayview if we had an acceptable offer as of September 30th. I think that was the mandate we set for ourselves. We did not make that September 30th deadline. However, we made enough progress that I think we need to discuss and decide upon whether to continue with this course of negotiating with Bayview. I think as part of the board packet, you see a draft that existed as of Monday this week. And that draft was produced after a good half day's worth of negotiation with Bayview. We have since had another more than half day of negotiation that took place yesterday. And we have gotten to a place where we are extremely close to an acceptable offer. The district still needs to get a legal review of the contract, and we would like to do that. I think it would be a good idea to do that. I don't anticipate much. I'm sorry, this microphone's not working that well. Well, I'll go with this for now. I don't anticipate much of any type of changes that would come from a legal review on our side because there have been 2 lawyers at this the whole time in the form of Linda and me. But still, we would want to do that. So what I would like to do is essentially describe what the basic agreement is. The draft contract we're looking at is a state-of-the-art draft that was provided by HF&H as a starting point. And that, if we were to move forward, it would be this state-of-the-art draft that we'd be working with. So the basic proposal, and you can see this if you parse through the draft, but I'll just outline it for you. The basic proposal is to essentially enter into a new contract that would take effect effective January 1st, 2016. The old contract runs to September 2015. We would let the rates defined by that old contract continue until January 1st, 2016, at which time the rate would change similarly, but not totally like the way the rate changes now under the existing contract. Now under the existing contract, there are 2 features that affect the rate. Basically, one is CPI, cost of living index. Consumer price index increases in the contract rate yearly. And of course, under the old contract, the rate review every 4 years to ensure that the profit over cost for Bayview is 12%. The new contract would continue the CPI-based increases, and if you look at here, you'll see that the original thought was instead of using a CPI-based increase, there would be a basket of indexes that reflect labor, fuel, and consumer price increases. What we arrived at yesterday, however, was just keeping the same old CPI with one caveat. That rate would be bracketed so that it's always a minimum of 3% and a maximum of 5%. So, for example, the CPI 1 year only amounted to 2.5%, Bayview would get 3%. If the CPI was above 5%, then the increase would be limited to 5%. There would be no longer any kind of rate review under this contract. It would simply be CPI-based increases, as I just described. Contract length would be 8 years. The franchise fee would be 7%. We have a little issue about what we would be paying to the county, but that's between us and the county. And other than that, and that's the basic rate proposal. The $4 difference between the 32-gallon can and the 20-gallon can, the mini can would remain the same, $4 no matter what the normal can rate is. And Linda, am I leaving anything out in the big picture here?
No, I don't think you're leaving anything out. All I would say is, can everybody hear me? Yes. Never a problem, is it? I think you've laid it out just the right way. We sat there for about 6 hours yesterday, and we talked this thing through. You can see the contract. This is
It was much more than 6 hours.
All right, it was, but you can see that we had to go page by page and argue back and forth about language, about what terms there would be. I think that Len has set out the basics of the economic side of the agreement. But a lot of the problems that we had in the past, they really came from 2 places. Squishy language that there was no standard language in that contract. And that gave rise to misunderstandings. I mean, some of the things like even the dates didn't match up in the contract. And that contract, now we're going forward with that, and the rates have been established. And the second issue was the rate review process. This was a terrible process. It's very costly. We have to sit there and hire professionals to come in, do a broad analysis of the industry, examine the books, of the hauler in order to be sure that the expenses and the charges are what's commensurate with the industry, and then to project forward and analyze whether or not the rate schedule would provide a 12% pre-tax profit over time to the hauler. This contract takes all of those problems away in my view. I'm not saying somebody couldn't read one clause or another one way or another. But in all material respects, I am confident that we have a standard in the industry type of contract which has appropriate language to deal with any issues that arise, that eliminates that rate review process, comes down at what I understand to be a straight CPI increase with a bracketed not lower than 3, not higher than 5. The hauler has his, which is Bayview, pretty much they know that what their expenses are going to be in terms of increasing with labor expenses. They shared some of that with us in the course of the negotiations. And I'm confident that we can come to an agreement that is along these lines, along the lines of the draft that you see. There have been some things we hashed out yesterday which are different than in here, but the same basic contract was discussed. Now, the last time we were here, the charge we had was to go away and come back to you. We asked, do you want us to still talk to Bayview, or do you want to go forward with the RFP? Well, everybody said, okay, go ahead, but you better come back here with the deal by September 30th. If you don't come back here with the deal by September 30th, we're going to RFP. We're back here again with a big 50-page contract that we've been going over line by line. Tracy Swanhorn is here tonight. She's from HF&H. She can attest to that. Hay Harris, he's the attorney for Bayview. He worked very hard on this in the several sessions he's attended to go through this thing line by line and argue over its terms. Also in on the negotiations was Charlie Cowden, who's the CPA, very knowledgeable about Bayview's finances, so we're feeling very confident we could accomplish this. But we didn't accomplish it according to the date that you set. So we ask you again tonight, do you want to give us some more time to wrap this thing out, or do you want us to proceed to the RFP? A big thing for me is if we don't do the RFP, we save a lot of money on that. I think with the franchise fee, it's going to be increased. It's going to be at least double, even if we deal with the issue of taking some of it and giving it to the county. So we will have compensation over time that will give us an opportunity to create a management fund for this contract, which if at the end of it we need to go out for RFP at that time, I believe we will have the funds. I think that the tying down to the CPI gives us certainty. We don't have to wonder about whether or not there's going to be a trend in rates that we have to do a rate review for. It's true, there will be, if you read the contract carefully, there will be specifically defined special circumstances that could occur. For example, a change in the law. At that point, we would have to come back together and talk again. But I do think we can do this. We will save the money that we would otherwise put to an RFP. We will be able to accumulate franchise fees. All in all, I'm in favor of doing that. But, you know, it is later than we said we thought we could bring it home. I don't know, do you have something to add?
I want to just comment first before we hear from folks out there. I am recommending that we continue this. And I just want to review a little bit about my thought process. You'll be next, I promise.
No, the board.
That's right. You got to wait your turn. So.
Yeah, I thought Mr. Harris.
Well, yeah, okay. We'll get to everybody. Just got to take it in the right order here. So I just want to be clear on what my thoughts are on this. We have a choice between an RFP process, which many people consider to be, the state of the art. That's how government entities deal with issues like this. But that process is not magic. Doesn't always work. You want to study Oakland's recent experience with this, you can see that sometimes it flows up in the face of the entity going out on RFP. It's costly. It would run us a lot more cost if we were to go through this process now and to conclude a deal. And it's risky. We don't know what kind of bids we're going to get. If we get a lower bid by another contractor, it's a contractor who has not serviced this community before. Odds are they have not serviced a community like ours before. We have kind of special needs. We're almost no commercial base. We have very narrow streets. We demand backyard service in most cases. The kind of business model a company has to use to service us is very old-fashioned. They use the old-style trucks, no mechanized anything, no provided cans that fit with the mechanization of the truck, so that the worker has much less stress and strain doing the work. These workers have to go pick up the cans and carry them back to the truck. That ups your workers' comp costs. That ups your risk of worker injuries. It's a business model that these kinds of companies are wanting to get away from. So they're not going to be super interested in lowballing a bid at Kensington. That's my feeling about it anyway. In contrast, we have a company here. We've had our disputes with them in the past, no doubt about that. I, for one, am convinced that those disputes all came out of very unclear legal language and statutes, and in the contract that we engaged in, that language was right to create a fight. We are getting rid of just about all that with this contract that we enter into it. We have a known entity, we know they can deliver the service. Every time you enter into a contract with a new entity, you have to suffer that period of like, well, are they going to be able to do it? Are there going to be problems as they learn how to do it? Is the relationship ultimately going to work out? Can they do the job? And the reason we have so many provisions in this state-of-the-art contract, and any contract you want to look at, is that things often do blow up, and there have to be ways to remedy that problem. So we are, in my view, trading some unknowns and some risks for a lot of knowns, a fabulous service history from the company. And what I think is a good deal for us and a good deal for the company, and that's why we'll get along if we enter into this agreement. Okay, Chuck, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I had a couple of comments for you. First off, I went back and looked at. Can you all hear me? I'm sorry. I didn't speak. How's this? That's okay. Yeah. I feel like Bruce Springsteen.
Feel
Hey, what's that? I looked back over the last month's meeting comments and the survey results, and I saw that Kensington community is comfortable with the rates and is comfortable with the provider. And we're starting the first year of this contract with the current rate in effect and the provider. And there's some wrinkles in here I'd like to work through, but it looks like we're meeting the goals of the community in getting a service they want to keep, saving a ton of money on the RFP process, avoiding it altogether, if you will, and keeping the certainty of the existing provider, which everybody seems to want. I think it's a win for everybody. One thing I do know is that the people do not want a mechanized collection system, and I just wanted to note that Section 6.4 gives the contractor the right to provide the collection vehicles. It doesn't specify no mechanized, when I mean mechanized, I mean what El Seguridad has, where they have a machine that comes out, picks up a rollaway bucket, dumps it, and puts it back down, and rolls it back to the curb. I just want to make sure that we keep the same kind of collection service we have now, which is a manual, a person with a can on his back walking up to the backyard to get the garbage, which I guess we have to if we're going to keep backyard service. I just want to make sure that stays in place. The other points seem pretty reasonable. The contract is incredibly readable for anybody who wants to spend the time to look at it. And I just think it's a well-drafted contract. Economically, there's some points I'd like to polish up a little bit, but I don't have any real great heartburn about it.
Any other board members?
Yeah, I have a few comments. First, I just want to compliment us because I think we've done a really good job on this board in this contract in coming to a resolution that people were not agreed upon. to what we currently arrived at. So many thanks to Lynn and Linda who carried the ball on that. But also to the entire board in the way I think we respect each other's opinions and try to come to some kind of consensus when we think it's appropriate. Having said that, I've been really struggling with this because I do think that there are people in the community who would feel like we were remiss if we didn't go out and have an RFP to make sure we're getting the best possible rate we can. On the other hand, it's expensive to do that. The conclusion I came to had to do with the way I would remodel my house. I go to the same contractor every time to remodel my house, even though I know he's more expensive than other people who could remodel it for less. And I do that because I know exactly what I'm going to get. And I know what I'm going to get is absolute top service. He knows me, he knows my house, he knows how crazy I can get, and he knows how insane my husband is, obviously. So I'm willing to pay that premium in order to have that security. And so my thinking has evolved from maybe we don't really need to go out and survey the landscape to ensure that we're getting the best possible rate possible, the best rate possible. If we think, and this is going to be one of my questions, that what they are offering us at Bayview is competitive, because what we get in exchange for that is a company we know, a company who knows us, a company who the community feels really serves its needs, its unique situation. And to me, that's worth trading what might be some money. So I'm sort of the same place that Chuck and Linda and Lynn are. But I do have some questions. And Tracy, this is a question for you.
Yeah, actually, I did want her to come up and,
Okay.
so maybe she should come
Maybe
up
she'll
now and
answer
we can all ask her.
Let me tell you the questions I have, just so you can make sure you answer them. I have questions about the rate, the 7% issue. I have questions about what the district code is. There was some reference to what law would govern, and they said...
We took that out back.
We took it out?
Yeah.
Okay, we took it out, not them.
We took it out.
Okay.
We don't have a code.
I wondered, I was like, what is the district code? I have questions about the county franchise fee and how that's going to get taken care of, because I know there have been some concerns about that and how that might impact actually what the franchise rate is. And that's as much as I understand about the contract.
Let me just clarify your first question. You said you had a question about the 7% rate?
Franchise fee.
Franchise fee.
Oh, franchise fee, okay. Well, with regard to the franchise fee, right now there's a total of 5% paid out, and some of that goes to the county and some of it stays with the district. There is a contract that the district has with the county and Bayview that obligates that payment of the franchise fee, and it expires 1 year after the commencement of this new agreement. And the district isn't entirely sure what's going to happen at that point. So what we've done in this contract is we structured a franchise fee of 7%. So there's an extra 2%, which translates to about $20,000 to maybe $25,000 a year that will come through the agreement. All that money will come to the district. And that allows them to work through the contractual arrangements with the county. They may continue to pay the same fee. They may continue to pay no franchise fee to the county, or maybe some other type of arrangement. That will be determined. But as far as this agreement goes, the team here has negotiated a 2% additional payment in a franchise fee, which didn't result in an extra rate increase. It's coming out of the company's pocket, essentially.
Can I just edit here a little bit or add? There's, in addition to the 3% franchise fee that we pay to the county, there's also the hazardous waste collection fee that is currently paid by Bayview, and this contract contemplates that Bayview will continue to pay that hazardous waste fee.
That's correct. So I think I covered both your questions, and the district code, as you mentioned, we did eliminate.
Can I ask you how that 7% compares to what we might expect if we want an RFP? I know that's difficult to predict, but can you give us a range based on your experience?
With an RFP process, the franchise fee is something that you decide yourself. It's typically decided up front and written into the contract. Ultimately, your ratepayers, they're paying for that franchise fee. So we have agencies that have fees, franchise fees and other fees that they've layered on that amount to as much as 30%. Your 5% is very low. The average is 10%. So that 7% is within that range. And the goal in terms of increasing that was to start to generate funds so that if you look at an RFP process down the road, or if there's a change in law or something that comes up, you have some money available to work with that.
And just to clarify here, so we do get in a mode here, like if we want to raise the franchise fee, that simply means we raise the rate that the citizens pay to get their garbage collected. So we sort of have to balance those two. How much do we really need as a bare minimum versus how much do we want to have as extra in our war chest or whatever you want to call it. But the more extra we have, the more the ratepayers pay for that.
There's one other really important part of this. The 7% represents a doubling of the franchise fee that we now receive, even after the payment to the county of the 3%. Moreover, it's done at the same rates that exist in the contract right now. So the way this is structured, it really is coming out of the contractor's clearance now at this time.
One other thing I asked early on, Tracy, if we could get part of the reasoning behind this other approach is to bring in a neutral third-party type entity like HF&H, which you represent, to give us some guidance in this process, some indication of whether ultimately the deal we would consider entering into would be considered competitive, looking at the market rates. And I think at one point we got a comment from you on that. I just wondered if you had anything to add to that, or any statement about how this looks, given your experience in other situations.
Well, we talked about the contract, as Linda and Len said. We used a standard industry contract as a starting point, which really takes it up many notches from the current agreement that you have. And I do have to commend Linda and Len. They have been great to have on this team, exceptional knowledge base as attorneys. And I said, I wish I had attorneys like this on every single project I work with, because they've done a really great job and provided valuable input. So in terms of the rates, when I was here last month in the board packet, there was a rate analysis that we presented where we looked at rates for 12 agencies, and we took those rates and we backed off their franchise fees. As we're talking, every agency's got different fees. So we backed those franchise fees off, and then we compared what was left, which is acceptance, is the amount that the contractor essentially retains. So when we looked at that, the Kensington rates for the 20 and 32 gallon service level, which represents 90% of the customers here in Kensington, were just below the average backyard rates in those 12 comparable agencies. With regards to the larger container sizes, the Kensington rates are higher, but again, 90% of your customers fall in that category. So I think that's a good indicator of the arrangement that you have. Certainly the compensation mechanism that you've negotiated is something that's going to provide you a lot of assurance over the term of the contract. You won't get involved in that detailed review. You won't need your consultants to come in every year to help you with calculations, so there won't be money spent there. It's a simple calculation that can be done by the company and reviewed by the general manager.
Before you sit down, anybody have any questions for her from the audience? It's strictly for her, just on what she has spoken about. Okay.
I'll let Len.
Go ahead, Kathy, go ahead.
This has something to do with what you said and what you said, and you referred to the base rate at the beginning of the contract, which would be January 1st, 2016. What is the base rate?
So just a little point of correction, the commencement date is actually September 1 of 2015.
Well, that's what I thought, but
the current agreement...
That's not what Len is...
I'm sorry, I said a little bit wrong. The rate, I think, would continue until January 2016. The existing rate.
So you would have the same rate for 3 additional months?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, big deal.
Apologize for that.
And there would always be the rate, but you did allude to some slightly different formula for establishing the rate as of January 1st. And what is that?
That formula is CPI. Actually, Bay Area, what is it? What's the official name for that? Urban.
It's a Consumer Price Index, All Urban Consumers San Francisco Bay Area Index, which is
Minimum of 3%.
3%. Yeah.
And what was the CPI for 2013?
It's like 2.45.
Yeah, it's 2.5, I think, and this year we're up to 3.
And
Yeah,
2012?
Well, I almost have those numbers on my fingertips, but I don't. I know it's averaged about 2.5% over the last couple of years. But it's a little bit higher. I think she just looked at the numbers. But yeah.
Well, let's see, I'll ask the next question.
Okay, Anthony?
Can you explain why Kensington subscribers to this garden service are paying the county any portion of the franchise fee?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, goes back to litigation in 1996. There was litigation where the Bayview Company and the county had an agreement, and it was outside. Kensington perceived it as a usurpation of its power to administer the garbage. There was litigation surrounding that. It was settled. Kensington entered into a settlement agreement. It was a 3-party agreement. Under the agreement, they agreed to continue to have Bayview have a contract with Kensington, which is the one we have now, and that goes all the way to 2015. And we would get 2% as a franchise fee, and the county would get 3%. At the same time, concurrently, there's an agreement with the county. That runs 1 year longer than the agreement that we have. So that's why we have to pay the county.
I'm sorry, it doesn't answer my question at all. Well, why does the county need this money, or what do they want it for?
They do several functions for this. Chief, you have some information on this.
Yeah, they handle all the state mandate reporting for us. And they also allow us to use our hazardous waste
The
facility.
hazardous waste facility,
Because we don't have
transport.
we're not part of that contract. So without that agreement with the county, we would have no place to take our hazardous waste.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions right now for Tracy? Yes, go ahead.
Help me understand, I apologize, I know you went over this, but in addition to the CPI range to adjust rates, what happens if there's an extraordinary rise in the cost for the hauler? Because we used to have the periodic rate reviews
We don't have
to
that.
guarantee the 12%. So how is the 12% guaranteed now if that's still...
Okay, if the extraordinary costs were to come about because of a change in law, in other words, some new service were mandated, we talked a little bit that, like, suppose there was a law that garbage trucks have to use electric powered engines from some date forward. That would be something that would bring us back to talk about what the rate should be.
What about something more pedestrian? Let's say diesel costs triple.
That it has to be a change in law.
No,
The rise in cost is their risk.
I see, okay.
It's all their risk. There's only 2 openers to come in for cost. One is a change in law, and the second is a district-directed change in scope.
Scope of
So
service.
if you wanted some different type of service, then you'd have to enter into some sort of, conversation.
Okay, so let me reiterate what I think I heard you say. Not literally, but it sounds like what's different about this contract, which one could get excited about, is that rather than this effectively, the ability of the hauler to say at any time I have an extraordinary circumstance, I have to have my 12%, and we start arguing. Right now, there are just the 2 pathways that the attorney said. So if diesel goes up 5-fold, not Kensington's problem.
No, that's where the CPI, that's what that's meant to address.
But only through the CPI.
Yeah, and see, there's a risk to both sides. We've got an 8-year period of time. And the risk to Kensington, frankly, is the CPI doesn't rise 3% every year. we're tied to the minimum 3% payment. That's our risk. Their risk is CPI rises more than that. And, 8 years' time, we could see inflation easily rear its ugly head, especially in fuel costs. So, there's some risk here on both sides. We started this whole process out on the premise that we were going to come up with a contract that would minimize the potential for us to get into a dispute. And that's with her help, with Tracy's help, that's what we think we've come up with. Yes, go ahead.
Has there been any discussion about improving the recycling services in terms of what we can recycle, or is it going to be just a continuation of what we have now, or
Okay, you're talking about like adding food to recycling, is that what you're
adding
thinking?
food, adding cartons, adding clothes hangers, and whatever?
Well, they do take unlimited recycling twice a month. That's not too common. But no, we haven't talked about changing the scope of that. No food, none of that. The food thing, I think, will be very problematic. So we're talking about essentially continuing the same service paradigm that we currently have. And some of that's based on the survey. Most people didn't want to change it. Yes, go ahead.
I thought that I read among these items that could be picked up would be concrete. Concrete items. Besides they did this whole list, and we talked about concrete, and I thought, what is that? I mean, when did that occur?
Where's concrete listed?
The listing of items that could be picked up in recycling.
Listing where? I'm sorry. Where is the listing? What is the
Well, I'm
listing?
sorry, I don't have it with me here. Someone else does, but there is a listing, and I swear it said concrete, and I thought is that correct?
I don't think it is. Tracy, have you ever heard of that as being part of recycling?
There was the listing of what could be recycled. There was a big paragraph, including many. Maybe I just read it.
Okay, well, she's looking that up. Any other
I'm
questions?
not looking it up, don't count on me.
Yes, go ahead.
It's my understanding that there is no longer the 12% guaranteed profit.
That's it. That would be eliminated. Carl,
You've been very patient. You couldn't be talking about me saying that. I was the one who said last month that it's not that complicated and you ought to continue to negotiate. And then I looked at the 67 pages of that draft, and I appreciate what you have done, and I would encourage you to continue to do this. However, I would ask them to give you a letter that says they will guarantee service until December 31, 15, which is a 3-month period, because then you have about the 90 days of extra time that it gives us to negotiate things.
Well, if we enter into a contract, the contract would obligate them to fill that gap.
But I'm asking that they give you a letter saying that you will serve the community until December 31st, 15, no matter what our next contract is going to be, whether it's going to be with them or someone else.
Yeah, I think what he's trying to do is prevent anyone using this as a way to delay so we're stuck.
This contract will be effective September. This contract, as part of that, the hauler will hold the rates then in effect until January. There's no gap.
That's what Ben said a while ago.
Yeah, that is what I said.
There's no gap. There's no gap.
Carl, have you tracked a statement on the effective date?
You said the new contract will start on January 1st.
He misspoke.
Yeah, I thought I corrected that, Carl. Go ahead, Terry.
I took a look at the definition in the Exhibit A, which is titled Single Stream Recyclable Materials Definition, and that defines all of the materials. Concrete's not included. In that, there is quite a laundry list, and there may be more materials than you all are aware of that you can put in the container. So maybe as part of the public education that comes around the new contract, you want to promote these things.
We'll make sure we get that out
Here's quite a
crystal clear.
list.
What section was that, Tracy?
It's on Exhibit A, page 89. Recyclable materials.
You want to look at the single stream recyclable materials
She's right, it says concrete.
It says concrete, and when I read it, it's.
Well, gee, Gloria, I expect to see you with a whole pile of rubble out front.
I am a lady who's had to street many times.
Yeah, you know, that is a little bit confusing. That definition that you're looking at for recyclables is a very general and broad definition. There's another definition called single stream recyclable materials, and those are the materials, it's a smaller subset. Those are the materials that the contractor is obligated to collect from you. So,
And those don't include concrete.
And those do not include.
It was in there.
No, you're right, it's in there.
It was. Avery, you're up. Okay, everybody settle down. You have a question coming.
You're saying that the rates will be held through September and then through January.
The rate in effect as of September 15, 2015, when the current contract goes away, that rate will continue until January.
Rate you have now.
No.
No, it goes up every year.
Oh, it will. Okay.
So the rate under the existing contract, our rate is going to go up this coming January. January 1st, 2015, the rate will go up by CPI. That rate, which will be the same rate in effect September 2015 when the current contract expires, if we get entered into this new contract, that rate will continue up to January 1st, 2016.
At which point
The new CPI increase kicks in.
Okay. It wasn't clear to me what the basis was.
No, that's good. I'm glad you asked. I want to be crystal clear.
And I think I had another question, but.
Okay. Okay, well, think of it. Go ahead and ask later. Yes, sir, back.
Yes, I'd like clarification on this franchise fee. Here's my understanding from what you explained. Some time ago, a franchise fee was established at 5%. 3% went to the county, 2% went to Kensington.
Correct.
Under this new contract, that franchise fee goes to 7%. 4% presumably coming to Kensington, the rest still going to the county. But you also said that the franchise fee that was entered into in this litigation that occurred with the county, that this agreement expires in about a year. So my question for you is, does that allow the county an opportunity at the time that whatever this agreement that you were talking about expires, for them to also ask for an increase in the amount of franchise fee?
Conceivably, it could. We need to do a little bit more homework on that. One way to read that county MOU is that once we enter the new contract, that 3% continues as per the existing MOU with the county. It's not crystal clear if you look at the wording of that MOU, but we need to have a little bit of discussion with the county.
That could clearly change the amount of money that you would receive.
Well, there's one other part. That is an independent agreement, not the agreement with the hall. So the impact of that is as yet unknown, and there's a couple arguments. And we can't solve that through the babies right now.
Yeah, actually, we have the same problem if we do the RFP. We still have to confront that issue.
Either way.
Mabry, and then.
Okay, my other question about the contract was, I thought I read a phrase in there, well, one, we're all in agreement that 7% would be the franchise fee, but then I thought it said Bayview would pick up the county portion.
No, that's not what it says.
It's not, okay.
Kathy?
Yeah, there's a paragraph in there that permits you to change the scope of the franchise services without opening up the whole contract for renegotiation. You can just change it and then make an appropriate adjustment in the rates. Could you put in a paragraph that would allow you to adjust the franchise fee so you don't box yourself in with whatever it is you have to work out with the county?
Well, we could do that anyway. I mean, we could always say, look, we want you to pay us more of a franchise fee, and we'll pay you the difference in the rate. That's always a possibility.
Where's that?
No, it's not in there. I'm saying, we have a contract that says the rate is 7%. We can always go to Bayview and say, hey, look, we need 8%. Would you be willing to give us 8% and charge us, whatever it takes to make up the difference? That's what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, but I would hate to have it open up a whole can of worms, like you have to renegotiate
It
the
wouldn't.
contract.
It's a simple, it's a simple pass-through if we want to go there. I mean, if we put it in the contract.
I understand that, but okay.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We have not had that discussion, so we can have it with them and see what they say.
I think that we should get further information on the desirability of trying to nail down that county contract right now anyway.
I agree.
Well,
I don't think that it's necessary to do that for this contract. I think I want a lot more information on, is it to our advantage to press the continuation of the existing contract with the county, or is it to our advantage to take the position that it expires and we don't need the county? I think it's completely independent.
Well, and it's going to take some time probably to work out. Like I said, we have this issue to confront with the RFP as well. It's the same issue.
I'm just saying it's an unknown, and it feels to me like you're backing yourself into a 7% when you might, if the county demands more or whatever, you might like to have the options on.
But it isn't, but
It's a good comment. I mean, it's worth talking
But it
about.
isn't Bayview that would be impacted.
No, what she's saying, Linda, is if suppose
Yeah.
we wanted to get 8% instead of 7%, could we go to Bayview and say, hey, will you give us 8% in exchange for raising the rate so you can pay us the 8%
To cover the
without losing the
money?
money?
I don't think they would have any objection to a simple pass-through.
I can't imagine they would. We have not had that
They
conversation.
wanted to renegotiate to their benefit. I mean, it's.
Right, she's trying to limit the reopener, so it only deals with one thing.
Okay, so we can have the conversation, okay? There's no reason why we can't do that.
Which is a very good idea.
Yes, sir.
The franchise fee, it sounds like from Tracy, the big deal about this is that it allows the creation of kind of a rainy day fund. Is that actually the case, or does the revenue that we get from that go into kind of the board's general fund?
No, it cannot by law go to anything but related purposes to the contract, and that's the whole Proposition 218 business.
I think that this contract sounds very close, and that's very good, and I hope that you don't give up.
Thank you.
I just have some questions about the public's place in this contract. Is this the time to ask them, or?
I would think, Mr. Harris, would you care to come up and comment from Bayview's perspective about this process? And, if you may not be able to answer Kathy's question because your client isn't here, but you've taken the trouble to come here tonight, and I want to thank you for doing that, and thank Louis for paying for you to come here. So give us a good show, will you?
If this keeps up, I'm going to be on a truck. I'm here for a purpose. There has been an awful lot of very hard work done in the past several weeks. And as Len said, Len and Linda, and Tracy and I, Louis Lagoni himself was present as we needed him. Greg Christie, who's the general manager, who many of you know, has come to these meetings. And I sat down on Monday, and Chief Harmon was there as well. And again on Wednesday. And that's after Tracy had gone through that contract line for line, word for word. The same with Len, the same with Linda. And I did the same thing, and Louis Lagoni did the same thing. And although the ultimate contract is a little different from what is attached to the packet, because we had only gotten through a certain portion of the contract, what came out of it yesterday afternoon around 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon, I think is a fair contract for both parties. And that's really what the law of contract is supposed to be all about. Louis Lagoni has served this community for 70 years. And over the last years, as you know, there have been lots of comments on what would happen when this contract expired. And there were comments that Louis Lagoni wasn't going to bid on it again, and he was just going to let it go. But that's not what happened, because he likes this community. His workers on the trucks like the customers in this community. from what Len tells me, a public show of appreciation for the company and pleasure with the work that they do and how they do it was encouraging to Lewis, and so that's why we sat down to do what we've done. I don't comment on all of those things about the RFP and the risk and the rates and who will bid. Those are matters for your board. But I think the reality is this is a good, well-negotiated contract for 8 years in the future that is very certain. The uncertainty of the old contract wasn't good for Kensington. It wasn't good for the company either. It ended up in litigation, and the attempt is to have avoided that with the new contract. The rates will go up a certain amount on January 1st every year, and if there is risk, Bayview bears the risk of those extraordinary increases that may happen with the exception of two things: change in law, change in scope requested by the board. So I'm sitting here and I'm listening to comments. They're good comments. The tenor is far different than some of the meetings that I've had. I'm appreciative of that. I'll carry that back to Louis Pagoni. If we can execute a contract, and we are in agreement with the final draft of yesterday, it has to be reviewed by the district's attorney. I don't know what they're going to say, but from my perspective, as an attorney for Bayview, I've approved the language, and I thank Glenn, and I thank Linda, and I thank the chief, and I thank Tracy, who really we all worked very, very hard to get to this point. So you had a special question or a specific question?
Questions for Mr. Harris? No?
Well, it deals with the office hours and when one registers a complaint.
Oh, there is, and I'm not sure which
Well,
draft.
for instance,
Office
your
hours
street
are going to be
was
from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, because garbage people start earlier and we finish earlier.
No, I just want to make, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not sure she and really asked, I'm not sure I understood what the question was. Can we do that again, please?
What I read, I thought I read, along with the part about concrete, was the office hours are from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, okay? I thought I also read that collections might take place from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Let's deal with the second question first.
Okay, so my real question is, at what point do we call your office or their office, Mr. Fidoni's office, and say, you know what, you guys skipped our street this time?
Okay.
There's a phone answering service so that anytime that call would be done. But the office hours where there's a live person that you would talk to would be 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock.
And that's changed. That changed as a result of our negotiations yesterday. Those are the actual hours that are in the office.
8 to 3.
8 to 3. And I want to make a comment here.
Did say 5.
They answer the phone.
Well,
You call them, they answer.
but you know what happens? You call them and they say, oh, the guys have all gone home. We can't get your garbage.
Well, you know, the other thing you can do, and I hate this sort of, well, you know, you can call me too. You can call the chief. Call the chief first, okay? But, you know, we could call Greg Christie, the manager, 25 hours a day, and he'll answer the phone. So if somebody's got a problem, it will be taken care of.
Well, I can recall one time, sure, I called, I was not happy with the reception I got at Bayview, so I called Barry Garfield, and Greg Christie came up with a truck to pick up garbage on our street, which had been omitted that particular time. Because I also read that there are 24 hours to deal with excessive complaints, and they said missed pickups and one, but I didn't know if one time was an excessive complaint or not. And I just, you know, these are the things, the little things that bother a person over a period of time. It doesn't happen a lot, it happens sometimes. I'm a person who makes my husband get me up early on the greenways pickup days, because I know that frequently the garbage people leave things in the street, but I know that if I'm down there while they're picking up the greenways, much less ends up in the street. So it's one of those little psychological things. But I have swept our street many times. It's not that bad. I still don't mind the service, but you know, I'm just curious, how do we deal with complaints? And who can you talk with? And is someone really going to tell you every time, oh, they're gone? They're gone today.
I can't answer that directly, except if they are in the office everybody's calls and concerns, whether it's a complaint or not, very serious. If this company tries to give the best service to this community, I mean, we go into the backyards, nobody does that anymore without charging.
Yeah, I have to say, I've called them a couple times. I know other people have called them, and they almost always get a rapid, excellent response, and that's the best I can
Maybe
say.
Windsor Avenue is in a different place.
It's you, Gloria.
No, I don't think so, actually.
I was the host.
Okay,
I'd like
Anthony,
to
sir.
throw in my 2 cents worth, and Gloria, really, I disagree with you completely. I've called them several times with what you might call a complaint, it was really a comment. Because of a missed pickup. They've always been polite, they've always answered the phone, they've always been very accommodating, and to my amazement, they come around the next day and they pick up. And I've mentioned this to my wife several times. We have side conversations about how unusual that personal service is. So really, Gloria, what I hear from you is anecdotal. These are problems that you may have had, but I've never had, and I've been patient with it. So that's one part, but that really was why I wasn't raising my hand.
Okay, go ahead.
At what time
Finish
should
your-
the person call, say, here's the...
8 to 3, 8 to...
I'm asking at what time?
Okay, just let me finish. 8 to 3 are the hours, okay, that's it.
But
Okay.
at what time should the person...
8 to 3, right? 8 to 3 are the time to call. Go ahead.
My real question is this. You're asking for an extension.
Right.
And it looks as if an extension would be very promising, given the information you've given us. Can you estimate when this could be wrapped up? I asked all of you. Are we talking about a week, a month?
I've done my part. It has to go to your council.
Yeah, he said they're in agreement with this draft that we arrived at yesterday. Not the one that you've seen in the board packet, the one that we arrived at yesterday. We have to do our legal review. I am confident that we can wrap this up in the next 2 weeks and have a proposal for the community to look at, a completed, gilded proposal for the community to look at the next meeting.
That gets my question, which is, at what time is a good time to call the office and say, you skipped our street?
8 to 3.
No, they're not going to send anyone out at 3. Should we call it 1 or 2 there, and people still likely to be
Let me just
available?
answer this from a practical
Yeah.
experience. If your truck usually comes by your house at 8 a.m. and they're not there at 8:30, call them. Because the trucks typically run a very regular schedule, and if they're not there, you call them up, and they'll tell you. Because if they're still out there and you call early enough, they can radio the driver and they can come back and get you.
For the regular time.
If you wait till 3,
That's
the guys have gone home.
You're gonna have a
It's
problem.
not reasonable to expect them to call somebody up and get them out on overtime. They have 24 hours to respond to the miss. So if you know right away that they missed your house or they missed your street, you call them right away.
And the other point is, suppose you do call them at 3 for whatever reason, they'll come by the next day. That's what they have done in the past. Okay, in fact, you've been waiting patiently.
Len, thank you for all the work you have really done, the whole board. And now immediately after thanking you, I'd like to throw a wet blanket on you.
Comes with the territory.
Yes, and that is, it does sound like we're 99% of the way to the deal, and I understand the arguments about why you proceeded this way, and it makes a lot of sense. However, as a paying customer, I'd like to hear a little more about if this thing takes a left turn unexpectedly. It sounds like it won't. But let's say something occurs in the next week or two. You find yourself, a week has passed, another week has passed. Can you speak a little bit to the timeline of when you walk away and when you move to the RFP process?
I can tell you, if we don't have it signed, sealed, and delivered by the next meeting, I think neither Bayview nor we are going to be interested in continuing to talk. Am I right about that, Mr. Harris?
Well, we've gone a long way to putting a contract in place. And I can't speak for your council, but I'm very optimistic that they will agree to these terms.
I've been trying to say this for a few minutes, but I just would like to say this goes directly to this point, and it is my concern being ever the skeptic. And that is, could we get some kind of an agreement that if we don't have something by the next month, that Bayview will extend the current contract for a period of time so that we can do the RFP, because the concern that has been expressed by the community and by some members of the board is that we don't want to be backed into a situation where we can't possibly do an RFP because we've spent so much time trying to negotiate a contract. So can we have a safety net that everybody would agree on, that we could have some kind of extension?
Well, Pat, can everybody hear me? We did talk about that, and Tracy is telling us that at this point, for an RFP, we're getting pretty much up against the wire. We're still in the zone where we can accomplish it. Am I reading that
Why
right?
wouldn't we ask for it if we have what we believe is good faith on both sides? Why wouldn't we ask for it? I mean, it's just, all it is a safety net.
Well,
It protects.
I think we're going to make it either way, is what I'm saying. Is that right, Tracy? No, what I mean is...
No pressure, Tracy.
No,
Well, okay, so in other words, the hard stop is next board meeting. At the
Yeah,
next
the hard-
board meeting, no contract, and we move forward with an RFP realistically at that point.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to rely now on the district's attorney. I don't know how quickly they'll be able to turn things around, but we're all optimistic in terms of what we've negotiated is good, and we've got a lot of attorneys that have looked at it, so we're very hopeful that the district's attorney will review it quickly. I guess, one of the things we could do is we could come back and we either have the signed deal completed by next month, or we come in with a letter that says we're super close, and if it, doesn't come together, they would extend 3 months, and we could try to get a letter.
I don't want anybody misled. There's a contract that ends September 1st or August 31st of next year.
Right.
That contract will be over. And that's a long time away from now. And I'm not going to get into the RFP process and what's involved. I'll leave that to your consultant and to your lawyers. But from Bayview's place, we have agreed to the terms of the contract that's going to go to the district's lawyers for their approval. And I have no control over that.
Okay. I'd like to follow up on that question.
Go ahead.
What I would feel very good about is, given what Pat just asked and what you've said, would the board be willing to entertain, I don't know how this was set up tonight, if it's actionable, but is there a possibility of Pat making a motion or somebody making a motion to state, in effect, that if you don't have the deal that you want at a certain point, that then the board will entertain the RFP? Is that a reasonable request?
Yeah, we might even handle it this way. We might say, look, Mr. Harris can't really answer the question about extending because his client isn't here, so he can't really answer that one way or the other. But we could say as a board tonight, either we have an extension like that, if we run into some problem, either we have an extension like that so we can continue negotiating without risking our future prospects, or we have a deal, one or the other. If we don't have one of those two things, we're moving forward with the RFP.
I would love to see that.
we already have it.
I think we do too. That's why I'm happy to make that statement. But go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, Mr. Bates.
Yeah, because one of the things about it that is odd is it's out of their hands. It's to our attorneys. So now their basic rate and the only hitching and glitch really relies on that.
Right.
Okay, so we would be kind of pissed at them if it didn't go through, or our attorneys would pay. So I mean, they've already again in good faith that we like this. They've done a lot of great work and put it together, and they like the idea.
Well, okay.
So
I don't, I honestly don't anticipate any derailment at this point. Kathy raised a good question about the franchise fee. We can have that discussion, but I think one way or the other, we're going to have a deal. If the sentiment is in this board tonight, we should move forward with this. We will have a deal by the next board meeting. That's my very, very strong feeling. Dr. Schwartzberg, you've been waiting for a long time to speak.
You guys have really listened. You've been flexible. And I want to thank you.
Thank you. Mabry.
You posted on the Monday agenda we'll say, I don't know whether it's draft A, but at that point it was draft what you thought was the final draft.
No, we didn't think it was the final.
Well,
It was as
okay.
far as we had gotten
It
at the
was as
time.
far as you got. Okay, you've now made some changes. And can that, the current existing proposal be posted like soon? And then if something gets changed between now, but rather than wait till the Monday, but as soon as there's some consensus, can that be posted so that the community can look at it a little bit sooner than?
Well, okay, I don't think we're going to be, are we going to, my thinking is we don't actually vote on this in the next meeting. We simply present it, say this is the
Well, when do you vote on it?
once it's been given to the public so the public can digest it. Maybe, we don't have to do it that way. We could post what we've got now.
No, we have to have a 218 hearing and.
That's true, we gotta do the
go through
218.
process.
Okay, but you could post what you've got now.
No, we can't do a running draft thing.
When did we do the 218 hearing? How soon could we do that?
That's next year.
So
There's time limits to the 218 hearing. We have to do that, regardless of what we agree to here. We have to go through the 218 hearing.
Right.
And that gives people a second chance that if they feel strongly against the contract, they can come protest it. But that's what we have to do. That's a question of state law. We can't change that.
So,
I'm not arguing
Yeah.
about not having it, but I'm wondering, okay, now you've got a current draft that you're talking about, and if you posted one on Monday that was earlier draft, can we get what you think is that close
I
posted?
don't think we can really post a running draft. This is like an instant replay thing. We can't bring a full contract to the board to review.
well, so at the next meeting, let's say everything goes swimmingly. What are we going to do at the next meeting? Can we vote on
Vote to approve it
it?
then?
Subject to the 218 hearing.
But you would post it, you would.
Oh, it's part of the agenda package.
Well, I know, but if you come to an agreement, if your lawyers say, look at it like next week, and both sides agree, can it be posted at that point?
You want an early posting? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I guess that's what I'm saying.
I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. As soon as we have it ready, we can post it, okay? So if it's ready 2 weeks before the meeting, we can post it 2 weeks before the meeting. Yes?
With the proposed rate structure, the rates that the 20% or so people who use the mini can, their rate will go up at greater than CPI each year. Why did you decide on this $4 difference? The same as Mr. Goni put in place in 1999 when the district required Bayview to offer the mini-can rate, and which I believe he insisted at the last rate review that it could go back to a difference of $4. Why did you choose that as opposed to a percentage difference?
The reason that we did that is it comes in large part because of the structure of the way that garbage is collected and recyclables in this particular community. It's a small truck, it's got a couple of guys, they run up and down the backyards. The costs that are incurred are the stopping to get the garbage, not the volume of the garbage. During the time that the AB 939 mandates came out, it was desired that there be incentives for people to recycle. And what actually happened is the people who paid the larger cans, were subsidizing the greatly reduced mini cans in that the cost to pick up those cans really is not composed of how much garbage is put into a landfill. The cost really is running the truck up the street and fielding a couple of guys to pick up the can. So that was why the rates were changed and why the stream was, there were a couple of options in terms of what kind of revenue stream could produce, putting on top of that, a 12% pre-tax profit. And that was why it was done that way. Well, we don't want an erosion of that. We do recognize that currently the same cost structure, if we continue this way, same cost structure is going to be there. It's true that we will be taking a greater portion of that insofar as we'll be getting a 7% franchise fee, which is a doubling of our franchise fee to us. And that's why, that was why we came to those terms.
Well, the argument was made that it cost about the same to pick up 20-gallon can as 32-gallon can. And I understand that completely. It does not cost twice as much to pick up 2 32-gallon cans as it does to pick up one, or to pick up 3 as it does to pick up 2. And yet those people pay a much higher rate. So it seems to me you can't make the argument is because this is what it actually cost for the service. So again, I can understand, a certain discount to encourage people to move down to a lower, to the mini can. But I believe it should be a percentage and not a fixed amount, because that $4 difference is going to become a smaller percentage each year.
Thanks for your point.
Yeah, I do want to point out that those who use the large volume cans are very, very few, and there's nothing wrong with a little incentive for those people who use their garbage. So,
And that's exactly why it used to be that multiple cans cost increasingly less until about 3 or 4 years ago, when it was decided to make it 2 cans cost twice as much as 1 can. 3 costs 3 times more. That got people to be serious about recycling and about reducing the amount of garbage. And I think we still need that incentive. For those 80% of people, or 90%, actually 75% of people.
well, this is what got us into the litigation, into the rate review. We've settled this. It's kind of, this is what we have to do to pay for the service. And that Lynn explained the cost structure. We're going to have to live with it. That's the best I can do. Anybody else? All right. I guess we should go. I'm sorry. Go ahead now.
In your introductory comments, you said that you were 90% of the way there, and this contract, but Linda suggested to me before the meeting that you still have, and you said this too, you still have a ways, you have done a lot to change the contract that we had before us that we received in the past from what you're now discussing. So the thing that you've all agreed on is not what we have in front of us.
That's right.
Could you give us an executive summary of the things that were the major changes, like the one about who pays for dispute costs?
I can't.
You can't?
No.
Okay. So,
60 pages long, and I can't do that.
well, just the highlights.
I don't have it in hand.
Well, then, is it true?
We just did this yesterday, Kathy, and we spent almost 8 hours going through this
Well, I
yesterday.
think it's a big
Most of it
thing.
is legal fine points.
It's not signed. You get a chance to look at it.
Right. I do think it's a big, never mind.
Well, actually, I understand what you're saying, and I thought the suggestion would help this. That if once we get the thing finalized, and I think it will be within the next 2 weeks, we'll post it. So you will have lots of time to look at this before we go to the next regular meeting. That's probably a good.
And it'll all be cast in concrete by then. That's fine. Okay.
Well, it'll be.
It'll be a proposal.
Right.
This is what we proposed. This is what we agreed to.
So, I'm sorry, what are you asking for, Kathy?
Well, one of the things that I thought was so remarkable in the contract that we received in the packet was that it said that in the event of disputes, the contractor paid all of the district's legal costs and contract and consulting costs. I thought that was quite extraordinary.
Well, I can summarize that one for you.
And that's been removed, I think.
No, that's been modified, so you didn't take it right. It's been modified to include that in the event of default, correct, Mr. Hare, in the event of litigation, each side bear its cost.
Well, what it says is that you go to mediation, And if you are
Right.
successful in mediation, that's fine. If you're not successful in mediation, go to court. And at court, the judge may award attorney's fees to the prevailing party, because I
Right.
looked at that as well.
Right.
Okay, so that's pretty
It's a
much.
may
That
award, it's not a
discourages
must
litigation.
award.
Yeah,
And
okay.
that probably is more common. It would be very
Yes,
useful. to
I
have
agree.
someone-
I agree, but that's why I thought it was remarkable and now that's gone. Okay, thank you.
Any others?
Not now.
Before we proceed, it's almost 10:15, and it's clear that we're going to go beyond 10 o'clock.
Oh,
this
we gotta
evening.
make that motion.
So we have to make that magic motion, folks. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we continue past 10 o'clock if necessary to complete all of the business that's been agendized.
Second.
Second.
No. Second and third. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. We go on. Don't
Me. Can we take a short bathroom break?
That's a great idea. We're going to take a short bathroom break, folks. 5 minutes max. I went to the factory. Okay, so we're resuming the meeting, and I do want to again thank Harris for coming here, and Tracy Swanborn also. And I do want to say there was an awful lot of hard work that went into this, and also on the Bayview side. We had numerous discussions. Louis Tagoni was involved in a lot of them. There have been some very strong emotions on both sides of this issue. And I just personally, having looked at the whole history of this, I don't see any really good guys and bad guys in this. I see a good, solid corporate citizen and a good community, and we got into a conflict, and it's too bad. I think it's because of unclear law and badly written contracts. And I am looking forward, if we can, to, I hope we will start off a new era of getting along with a very good company. And I just want to say again, thank you for your hard work, Haig, and please thank Mr. Pagoni for his work, and also Greg Christie. I had numerous conversations with him, including, hey, can you get us another dumpster up here right away for the fuel? They're not even obligated to do that, but they just do it, and they don't charge. So, I mean, that's it's not all about pinching pennies on anybody's side here. So, thanks again.
Thank you, and I will communicate that to Louis, and we should
So now we come to a decision-making point. I'm going to propose a motion, and if somebody wants to jump in, if I flounder, please feel free to do so. I would move that we continue our negotiations with Bayview to finalize a contract that must be absolutely ready for consideration by the next board meeting, or if not ready, we have got an extension of time on the existing contract so that we can continue whatever negotiation we think we need to continue. You get all that, Lynn? Okay.
I would make a friendly amendment that it
Okay,
be an
please.
extension sufficient to allow us to engage in a robust RFP process.
Yes, without compromising the RFP process in any way. And I do want to comment, not that I think we're going to need that extension. I think we're pretty much there. But out of an abundance of caution, let's put it in there. And thanks for the suggestion. I know Chuck actually came up with that idea last meeting. And I'm glad that you brought it up again at this meeting, Pat. I think it's just wise policy.
Before I second it, looks like the chief is saying we can't do
I
that.
think Mr. Harris is going to speak for me.
Oh,
Well, a suggestion, not your lawyer, but the motion contain language that you will communicate this final copy that we've arrived at yesterday to your lawyers with a request that they expeditiously review it, because it's in your court now, so to speak.
yeah, I mean, I said continue negotiations. Obviously, that is part of it.
I'm just curious about the second part of the motion when we talk about extending the current contract. I don't know if we have that authority.
No, I didn't understand that to include that. I can't speak to extend the contract from.
No, I know you can.
I think what maybe you were talking about is extending the process so you can put it out for RFP, but I don't want anybody to be misled that Louis Fagoni would agree to extend the contract after August the 31st. If we don't have an agreement, you can't get your RFP process launched. That contract ends on August 31st.
Well, okay, it does, but we haven't talked about this yet. And all I'm trying to do, hey, acknowledge that we really only have two options left to us. We either have a final deal or we have something that makes it so that continuing to negotiate doesn't compromise our ability to engage in an RFP process. And maybe you already know how your client would rule on that, and that's fine, but that's what the motion is. Are you you're still looking perplexed, Chief?
You know, Chief, we aren't trying to bind Bayview. We can't. We're stating our position on this side of the table of what we want to do. I think the motion's just fine for what it says.
So we're going to be...
Our position is if we don't have a contract in full by the next meeting that everybody is ready to sign off on, then we're going to go after Bayview and ask them for an extension of their contract sufficient for us to do the RFP.
Or we say we're just going to go after the RFP. I mean, that's if we can't get one of those alternatives, either the final deal or the extension, then we're going to RFP.
Could you restate that motion so that it includes everything, please? I want to make sure that this is absolutely accurate.
Could you? No, I was just joking. You know, how could I ever remember all that babble that I spouted? But could you do me a favor and read back what you have, and maybe that I can edit? If it's not right.
Motion that negotiations continue with Bayview such that a contract must be ready for signature. Without that there be an allowance for an extension of time.
Or failing that. Okay, instead of without, or without that, or failing that.
Failing that there would be an extension of time on the current contract sufficient enough to allow for the RFP process.
To continue without being compromised.
We would have to try to negotiate at that point, right?
That's our sense of the board tonight, though, that we wouldn't ask for that negotiation. Or the hard stop is next month. If there's nothing in final, the RFP takes off.
Okay, I think what we're really saying is either we have a contract in place by the next meeting.
I'm good with that part. It's the second part that I'm not sure.
If the contract isn't in place by that time, but we think we're close, we're like in the same situation we are now, we aren't going to go forward, and Bayview needs to understand this, unless we have an extension of the first contract.
In other words, the expiration date of the contract we're in now would be extended.
I understand what you're trying to do. I'm just...
So what's your problem?
I don't know if... what you're basically asking, if we can negotiate that issue, that's fine. But if you're saying we will get there, that's something...
No, we're not saying that.
Here's what he's saying. All right. Either we have a contract and it's signed, or we go to RFP. That's what we're saying. And the only way we don't go to RFP is if there's an extension of the existing contract.
That's it.
That's
allowing
it.
sufficient time.
For the purpose of
That's for the purpose of negotiations.
That I can agree to.
And we can't make.
So that's what it said, Steve. Listen, okay, would you read it again,
We
please?
can't
Frank?
make baby do that. Mr. Harris, you're shaking your head no. What?
Well, yeah, I think
We can't make you do
No, I
that.
think you're trying to pass a motion that doesn't have any effect because you can't.
That's my point. That was my point. I thought you were back. Come
It's
on.
a negotiation strategy. We are revealing the negotiation strategy, Mr. Harris. What
We're on the
saying.
same side, Chief, for a change.
Yeah.
What we're saying.
That's twice this week.
Okay, Lynn, would you please read it again?
I'd really appreciate it if you guys would restate it as a motion.
Right.
So that it's succinct and I can actually write it down.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
The board asked the negotiating team to inform Bayview that we will have, either we have a contract in place by the next meeting that is acceptable to both sides, or we will go to RFP, unless Bayview agrees to an extension of the contract currently in place for a sufficient amount of time to allow us to engage in an RFP. I think that's right.
And let me just say as a comment, we are fully aware that Bayview might not agree to that extension. We don't know. I mean, who knows? It could start pouring rain tomorrow and the ground will be over. But it might happen.
Well, I I don't know that I have to say, I don't know that it's a proper motion, because the expression of the sentiment that we might do something at the next meeting if the other party agrees to it, it has no binding effect. So I think the motion is just that we continue to negotiate with the purpose to have a contract next time, or we go to RFP. Now that doesn't stop us from demanding that, listen, if you don't want us to go to an RFP, we need an extension, because that's just an expression of what it would take to move us off that particular dump. But I think just expressing that strategy is not proper in a motion.
All right, let's keep it simple. I mean, after all, we didn't comply with our previous motion for last meeting.
We already were supposed to be at the RFP.
We are going to have a meeting, we're going to have a deal in place as of next meeting, or we go forward with the RFP.
What does in place mean in that motion?
A firm offer from
They've given us a firm
We've
offer.
gone through this contract and we've agreed. Now it goes from out of my hands. It goes to your attorneys.
Right.
And light a fire under your attorneys. That's my best
Well, okay,
advice.
but if their attorneys say, we don't like this phrase, whatever, 55, then
Then they have to come back.
yeah, then they would negotiate.
But I hope that's not what happens after all the work.
All right, Dr. Schwartzberg.
Can the language be, unless there is an agreement between the parties to extend the negotiation?
Well, we tried for that, but it created too much controversy, so we're going to leave that out.
I thought it was just, unless the board decides to extend. But
No, it was
agreement between the parties.
we had to go beyond that. We can't get agreement on that principle, so we're just going to go for the simpler thing. It doesn't matter. If we turns out, in the course of time between now and next meeting, that in fact we do secure an extension from Bayview, then fine, we'll just bring that.
Come in with that.
We'll come in with it, exactly. Yes, Mr. Bates.
But it's not, it's not Davies' gig. I mean, it's our attorney's thing. What we're waiting on is our attorney.
Well, our attorneys might bring up something that we need to go back and talk
They don't
about.
look at it in 6 weeks. Oh, 6 weeks. But that's
No,
not-
we're gonna get an answer from them right away.
Thanks for
Well, that's
your vote
what
of
we-
confidence.
No, I'm not saying. I'm just saying it can't happen. And you're saying put it all on Davies' side when in reality it's now the ball's in our court. We need to do something. But you're putting a time frame on them, which is
No,
because
that's-
it's in your court right now. So you gotta.
This isn't, we're in discussion of a motion on the board right now.
Did you have a motion last meeting?
Yes.
About
Yes.
this?
Yes.
And it said,
To bring it in by September 30th. And
Yes.
we said we couldn't do that.
yes,
We tried, but we couldn't.
you couldn't do that, but what was the consequence
There's no consequence.
in that motion?
I believe.
Maybe.
Oh, it would be to go to RFP.
Right,
Yeah.
and you're not doing that.
Right.
And I
Because
think
we have a better alternative.
all you want to move to do is that you will continue negotiations with the expectation that you're going to be come to an agreement
That's what the motion.
between the two parties.
That's what the motion is.
Okay, so Lynn, are you okay with that?
Okay, so what I have, unless there is a signed agreement at the next meeting, the board will proceed with the RFP.
How can you
Very good.
design?
And who is making?
Actually, it should be signed agreement, should be an offer capable of being accepted and getting us into contract. Yes.
That's
I would just
correct.
say an agreement acceptable to both sides.
Agreement acceptable on both sides.
Okay, so who's making that motion?
I'm making it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm seconding.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes.
And to address Mr. Banks, is it Mr. Banks in the back?
Bates.
Bates, Mr. Bates in the back, to address your issue, I would like to say, we would like you, the negotiating team, to instruct our lawyers to act on this very quickly, which I'm sure you would have done without that, but just so it's clear.
You got it. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the next agenda item. And that is number 4. We are into our second reading of Board Policy Section 1000. and the first reading of the introduction to the KPPCSD Board Policy Manual. And Linda, I think that's your item to lead off with.
There have been, and thank you, Tracy, thank you, Ms. Harris.
Yes, thank you very much.
There have been enough changes here that I think technically this is the first reading of this.
We'll never get through this.
No, we won't, because that's the way everybody wants to continue to write by committee. So, there we go. Do you ever try to write a letter by committee?
Red line changes at all?
No, there's somewhere in the universe there's a red line. But here, my own personal typing of the introduction.
Nicely done.
Thank you. And so I've added that. And here are the other changes that I have added. The other changes that I added come from Chuck Toombs, where you changed section 1020.30. You wanted to insert the word district, just to give me algebra. So I inserted that word there, district board. And on section 1050.36, there is a slight restructuring of the sentence, and that I have italicized. And I think, Barbara, I read your comments. Barbara Dills, I read your comments. Thank you so much for sending them in on that part. And you asked if 2 California Code of Regulations, it seemed like an unusual citation to you. And I believe I said last time it is not. This is the way in which regulations are cited. And also the therefore, you said isn't as clear. I didn't get any reaction back on that, indicating that anybody else agreed with you on that. And then finally, the exhibits were straightened out. So the exhibits now are exhibits 1A through, I just have to turn the pages here, through 1E, and they have been attached to this section. And I have one more. Dr. Schwartzberg, I have your change in here that you proposed, which was the principal. You wanted the principal rules of the board, and I didn't necessarily go along with the principal rules by which the board operates. I argued a little bit for a principal reference, a principal resource. And the sense of the board was that that was not necessary. There was a robust discussion. I don't know if you were here the last time, but there was a robust discussion about it to keep the board policies flexible. So this was what...
Opportunity to comment?
Pardon?
Will there be an opportunity to comment?
Once more with feeling. Yes, and I think I'm done with... This is what now constitutes section 1000. So I've tried to take into account not only all the comments I received, but the discussion that we had with it. And that's it. I'm presenting it, I think.
Comments are up for grabs.
It's for, you want it for a second reading? You think it's a second reading?
That's really our third. It's been out there for...
Oh, this is actually the third?
This is the third.
Okay, so it is the second reading. Yes, Dr. Schwartz.
If you're going to say a principal resource, by which board processes are governed, what are the other resources by which the board's processes are governed? I understand I was in Yellowstone and in Byron's fly fishing.
Lucky you, I was here.
Well, but you've been away doing playing, doing stuff.
Oh yeah,
and I didn't-
big time.
Well, that's before, and I didn't begrudge you, that. Okay. I understand, though, that at the last meeting, Chuck, that you said that the state law is
You were here
governing.
then.
Pardon?
You were here for the discussion.
I wasn't here.
No.
I have files.
He was the first, not the second.
Okay, at any rate, I would like to know then what state laws are applicable to the operation of the board.
The Brown Act's a good start.
Pardon?
The Brown Act's a really good start.
And the government code.
And the government code.
Pardon?
Government code.
If you give me time, I'll do a Google search and print you out thousands of pages.
I would appreciate knowing which of the laws, the state laws, govern the actual functioning or operation of the board.
The Brown Act. That's your
Government
starting
code.
point, right?
Is that the only thing?
I don't know if it's the only one, but that certainly is a starting point.
Okay, well, but it seems to me that if you're saying that the policies and procedures manual is simply a resource, that you guys be specific about what the other resources are.
There's not enough space in this document to.
All right, well, okay, he's made the point, all right, so thank you for the comment. Any other comment?
Because those who govern have got to be governed.
And believe me, we have more than enough laws governing us in our operations.
I'd like to know what they are.
I don't have the space in my life to tell you every law.
Next commenter?
Which I can hear.
Come on up.
This is to your point. This California Senate local government committee publishes something called What's So Special About Special Districts, which covers all the applicable laws that sort of inform how special districts function. And there's a nice little link. It's very simple, and it might be nice if that were included at the fore or as an appendix or within the appendices of this particular manual. It's, something that's published, I think last published in 2010. But it's...
I've read it.
So it's already out of date. So
I've actually already called that department, and there's no future, scheduled revisions. So it's as it stands, and it's published on the California Association of Special Districts. It's just widely published everywhere, but it is the go-to manual of, what a special district is, what it does, what it doesn't do, how they're formed, and it's very neutral, which I think is probably helpful. But
Okay, thanks for the comment. Could you do us a favor and give Dr. Schwartzberg the link so he can look
could
things
we
up?
maybe incorporate it in
Yeah, we got that. Okay, I'm just asking if, in addition to receiving your comment, could you give him that?
That might be an introduction to put somewhere on the board webpage.
It's a description, it's produced by the California Special Districts Association, and what it does is it tells you what the function of special districts is.
I heard that, but did you hear what I said?
maybe
It's not a policy manual.
Oh, no, well, I just suggested
Okay,
it doesn't have, it not in the policy
So
manual.
can I just rephrase? So what you're suggesting is that we include a reference to that just for people's interest
On your webpage, yes.
on the webpage?
My suggestion would be we take a look at it and see whether it belongs there. It's
it's a resource guide. It's not a manual. It's a resource
Yes,
guide.
it's just a resource.
Well,
It sounds like.
Did you want to say something, Chief?
Yeah, in our introduction page, it addresses what authority the board has under the government code. It also addresses under the government code the scope of authority. So it's listed in our introduction page, the sections under the government code.
Okay, well, that's a little bit different, I think, than what Vanessa was talking about. But so we'll consider the comment. Thank you very much. And yours too, maybe.
Could you email the link to us? That would be great.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Come on.
Is this manual,
Could you speak at the microphone, please?
is this manual now available in its old form or its
Yes.
edited form? And if so, where?
The old form?
No.
I don't think we have it online.
Well, there was in last month's agenda packet, there was the old,
Also,
there was,
Oh, okay, let's, there were
three versions of
Was Is it on the website?
2 months ago.
It is
It's also
now.
on the website?
It's in the agenda packet that we first brought this forward, the old packet,
August.
2 months ago.
So
Yes.
it'll
seemed
be
to
2
be
months.
partial.
Oh, so it's actually on the website as part of the agenda.
Or you
packet.
got the whole manual, or just this
The
section?
whole thing.
Oh.
Yeah, the whole section is, I mean,
The
the whole thing
whole,
is.
not the section, the whole thing. The whole
August
thing. Is that available?
2014 agenda has it.
I went hunting for it on the website,
The August.
and I could not find it.
You need to go to find the August meeting agenda. It's part of the agenda.
And I didn't think that the whole thing was in there.
You know, it was because we had a discussion then. We started to take comments on it, and people realized rapidly going into it that we needed to break it for comment. We needed to go to certain sections for each meeting in order to manage all the comments.
There
So
were
what's
three
there?
PDFs files that covered the original, intermediate, and final, or the red line, I don't know what you call it, the red line version, or blue line version.
But there's no section of the website devoted to the policies and procedures manual of the board.
Not at this time. There's no separate subcategory. We could do that, though. When we finally resolve what it is, of course we'll put it on.
Yeah, actually, we're in the process, as you probably know, of redesigning the website, and we're just about there, but we have things like that to do.
Excuse me,
Go
can
ahead.
you get your name, please?
Peter Conrad.
Thank you.
So what's your pleasure?
Do we have any more comments on the draft? I guess we don't, so.
I move that we approve board section, policy section 1000 as it appears in its current form in this packet.
Can I just ask a procedural question? And, do we need to do a third reading? Then?
Oh,
No.
Actually, we don't.
2.
No.
We've done the first one.
All
This
right.
happens to be the third, but we only need to do 2.
All right, can we hear from Celia first before we proceed?
oh, I'm sorry.
Director Gillette made a comment the last time about, this was section 1030.30, which had to do with the individual who is conducting an investigation shouldn't be independent. Conducting an investigation should be independent so that that person avoids retaliation. The difficulty being here that if you have a very small department, when you assign an investigation, for example, for one of 10 officers, is there an opportunity for really an investigation where the person who is doing the investigating will feel comfortable with whatever decision is made? And I guess what I'm trying to get at, there really are times when there ought to be an independent party, such as an ombudsman, and I'm not sure how this could be worked out, whereby somebody is the one who addresses the problem. For example, if somebody has a problem with somebody on the board, and the procedure is that that question has to be raised with the chief of police. It's a very awkward situation because the chief of police is employed by the board. So you have somebody who is an employee having to make some sort of a decision about, so to speak, his loss. Is there some way to remedy this?
I continue to believe it's a problem, frankly, as you know, but I didn't have a whole lot of receptivity to that. I do think it's an issue that you want to have the appearance of impropriety. I mean, no, the appearance that there's no impropriety and there's no conflict of interest, and no possible retaliation for the person who's doing the investigation. I mean, that's just good investigative technique. So I suppose you could add in something that says the board can appoint a special investigator at its discretion or something. That would be acceptable to the rest of the board.
In point of fact, the board has done that virtually with every investigation. We have had several independent investigations conducted by outside parties. We've never done it ourselves. We've always had some special. Sometimes the witnesses refuse to speak and we have to stop the investigation. But as a general rule, I think every investigation I've ever seen over the last 6 years that involved a citizen complaint against the chief or anybody else has been conducted by an outside party. We've hired somebody. It's a costly expense because we pay close to $5,000 to $10,000 for each individual investigation. So we do that already.
Well, maybe we should have something that says what we do. And I think the issue is going to be, let me just finish. I think the issue is going to be that it's going to depend on the situation and the magnitude of whatever malfeasance is alleged. And so that has to be decided on a case-by-case basis. So the question is this, capture that here in this.
The language actually is, it's like the Constitution of the United States. It's flexible enough to cover this. The board will resolve the matter expeditiously in making its final decision. The board may conduct conferences, hear testimony, as well as utilize any other form of evidence deemed by the board to be helpful in making a decision. That paints a pretty broad brush about what we're entitled to do and how we want to do it. It's a board decision at the time the matter arises about the decision to hire an outside investigator, because it is expensive. It really is costly. Pat would know that. And this gives the board the flexibility to find any reasonable means to resolve the issue.
So I think the problem, Chuck, is that in the first paragraph under section 1030:38, it says the individual with a complaint shall first discuss it with the general manager. The objective of resolving, if the general manager does not satisfy the individual, then, okay, it's the shall, it's the mandatory language there that is the problem. Because it means if I want to complain about Lynn, I may not feel comfortable going to the chief of police, or the general manager, nor may he feel comfortable with Lynn because Lynn ultimately evaluates his performance. That's the conflict that we're trying to avoid. So maybe we can make it, the individual should first discuss instead of shall, so it's not mandatory, or can go directly to someone else.
And who's the someone else?
It could be the president of the board, it could be
What if the complaint is against the president of the board? Why don't we hire a complaint hearer?
We don't have the...
I mean, it's...
You just dropped the bag of marbles into the middle of the room, and now everybody's skating around on it trying to find some resolution for every potential source. The drafters of the Constitution didn't do that. I mean, I think this really does work as a flexible
This isn't binding. This isn't the only way that we can appoint an investigator. This is a resource for us, and this is how we like to see it. There may be situations where it doesn't lend itself well, but we wouldn't say that this policy manual is a group of laws we have to follow. It's the best we can come up with in a, basically a 10-person department. I don't know. It's your pleasure. Whatever you want to do.
What if the complaints against the general manager?
They come to us.
They've had those complaints against the general manager, and ultimately it does come to us. But the starting point is with him. He can decide the veracity of the complaint. If they aren't happy, they have the right to come to the board afterwards.
All right,
the board gives the flexibility here to conduct any level of investigation it wants. So if they aren't happy with the chief and they fear retribution, their backup is the board here that ultimately will conduct an independent investigation of its own as it sees fit under the circumstances.
Okay, let me ask you a question hypothetically. Suppose the person doesn't want to discuss the complaint with the general manager.
You're inviting a circumstance where everybody's going to bypass that person and come to the board without any hesitation. And I don't think that's an effective way to do it.
I agree with that, but I just think you need it. If the complaint is against, let's just make it if the complaint's against the general manager, then the person can come directly to the board or take the mandatory language out. Because right now, the only way I can make a complaint under this manual is if I go to the general manager first. But if my complaint is with the general manager, then he's going to decide whether he can resolve it.
And if he can't resolve it, then the person has the right to come to this board. And we do resolve it unless the person's unhappy with that result, and they can go to court. And I've seen in this community, no one's afraid to go to court in this town. I think there's a flexible process in here that works the way it's drafted.
I would just take out the word shall. It's the mandatory language that's the problem. If you make it should.
There's a reason for that. You want someone to be a gatekeeper, or else this board's going to be inundated with complaints.
Should would imply.
Should is permissive. I just think
Should would imply they should go there first and
that's permissive. They don't have to do anything.
Well, here's the good news. This is not binding, as we see. So I guess we can have flexibility.
some of us
Can I
don't think that's
interject
good
here
news.
and say, there is a case of an officer who may have a complaint. And what does the police officer do?
The police officer has a different
Different
procedure.
manual.
That's a different, they have.
That's not this.
There's an MOU that covers grievances against parties, and they have to follow that chain of command. We've been down that road.
And they have a policy manual, which is separate from that, and that's departmental. It deals with sworn officers.
That's with sworn officers.
Yes.
Because you can understand the difficulty of an officer or any employee having to go to the immediate supervisor.
That's the department we have, Celia. We don't have a department with an HR department for the document. We don't have it.
I'm aware of that.
We simply have limited resources at the scope of what we can provide. Now, we've already failed to get this building renovated. How are we going to do hiring an HR person or other staff people to take on these ancillary complaints that may or may not arise? We don't have the resources. So the object is to make this as streamlined, as efficient, as effective as we can, given the resources we have. If people aren't happy with the way this is drafted, they don't have to do anything here. They can go file a complaint and go to court. Okay? I mean, we can't, you're drafting into this.
You really want to invite so many actions.
Well, I'm not trying to invite anything, Julie. I'm trying to make this a flexible living document that doesn't bind us where we're tied to something that's never going to be effective. And I've been in meetings where we've had disgruntled civilians totally or even staff or officers totally bypass the chain of command and try to come to the board for a redress of grievance that should have been handled in the administrative procedures, and they ignored them. I've been down that road with this community and this board, and it doesn't work well. You have to, if they aren't happy with the way the chief administers his vision or discussion, they can come to the board, and we've had that happen. And we've hired outside investigators to investigate complaints against the chief.
And how about the case of individuals who come to the board and ask for the board to do something, and the board just ignores the request?
When does that ever happen?
It happened when you personally were notified, and notified twice, that the policy and procedures were not followed when the vote was taken in July 2012.
And you know what? The Court of Appeals upheld our actions.
I am a citizen here and a taxpayer. I'm asking you, Chuck, can you tell me why you did not respond to the two notices?
Because we did nothing wrong in that action, and the Court of Appeals upheld our actions.
Yeah, I don't think we need to relitigate this. It's done.
It's really behind us. You may not be happy with the result this board took, and that's what an election is all about. But the simple fact is, whatever we did 2 years ago, we did in good faith, and the courts upheld our actions.
If
So that's, you're beating a dead horse.
To the notice.
Celia, you're beating a dead horse. The court has ruled you did
trying
nothing wrong.
very
All right, let's
hard
stop
to
the
bring some
conversation here.
sense
So what's
to
your
this
final,
board.
what's your final comment, Celia, please? What comment do you want to leave for the record here?
My comment for the record is very much what Pat suggested, that there should be something in it that clarifies that a neutral party is the one to try to make some judgment in the case that something comes up to the board.
Okay, that's the comment, right? Okay, thank you.
And maybe it is not phrased so elegantly.
No, we get your point. It's a legitimate point. The question really is, do we have the resources to do it exactly the way we'd like to in a better world? But it's a good comment. Yes, Dr. Schwartzberg.
a way of perhaps putting it is some prohibition against conflict of interest. I think that's what CDA is referring to.
Okay, well, does anybody on the board want to respond to this issue with the proposed amendment?
So let me see if anyone would like this. What if we made it read, the individual with a complaint shall first discuss the complaint with the general manager / chief of police with the objective of resolving the matter informally, period. Comma, unless the complaint involves...
Hold on, let's break this down so we don't have to restate.
I got it written down.
Okay.
Unless the complaint involves the general manager. In that case, the individual may request the board that the board appoint someone else to investigate the complaint. That takes care of a complaint against the general manager that you might not feel comfortable going to the general manager with. It doesn't take care of the issue with the board, but I think that we might have to just live with.
You're inviting a very, very costly process, and you're opening the door. You're already complaining about us being at a deficit, as Carl has routinely reminded us, and you're inviting a process where every time someone doesn't like what the chief did, we're going to have to go out and spend $5,000 to $15,000 to find an impartial person to decide the outcome.
But Chuck, it doesn't require it. It
Yeah, I don't
says
see it.
the individual may request the board.
But that's, if there's a complaint against the chief, well, can't the board appoint other board members to do it?
Exactly. Or the pick of an individual in the community who's respected. I mean, there's a number of
So they may make the request and the board will act accordingly. And that's the only change.
You've heard my opinions, and I think it's a misguided attempt to provide oversight that I don't think is necessary. And it's going to be very expensive and very costly.
Well, I don't think there are going to be many charges, any complaints
Yeah.
against the
It
general
will
manager.
be, trust me.
Oh,
6 years.
I have more faith than you do.
I got the scars to prove it.
We have the combined scars to prove it.
I
We're opening
agree.
the door to a series of intentional inflictions of pain and suffering under the guise of some public savior trying to help the community out. We've seen that before and it didn't work. I'm telling you, I've been down this road 6 years of battle scars to prove it, trying to preserve some sense of civility and governance without bankrupting the district from specious claims that were unnecessary from the very beginning.
Let's not go there.
You're so wrong, but
We disagree, maybe, you know that.
Well, I'm not sure where we're at with this right now. I think there's a friendly amendment pending to this. Next step for a friendly amendment?
I don't think there's a second, so it dies on the vine.
Well, I'm considering seconding it, but it sounds like we're sort of deadlocked here in our discussion. I think it needs a little bit more thought. If we're going to change this language, I think it needs more thought. I guess that's the best I can do.
That's what I would suggest. Why don't we give it some thought and see if we can come up with something, or maybe we don't need it. I mean, maybe it is overkill.
So shall we put this section over for reading
I think we should.
next time?
I would, if that's
Why
a
don't we
motion,
do
I would
that?
second it.
I move to put this over for another reading at a later date.
I second.
Do we want to limit it to just this issue and adopt the rest of it?
Well, I don't believe you can.
No? Okay. Yeah, okay. Why not? But okay.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe you can. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the fact is, if somebody wants to raise something next meeting about something else,
It could go on forever.
it could. All right, so.
It's been years now.
I'm sorry, so the motion is,
So I would limit it, I would do a friendly amendment to limit it to just that one issue. We pass it except for that one issue.
all right, that's the motion. The motion is to pass this section as drafted except for section, what is it, I'm sorry.
10:30:30.
10:30:30. That's the motion, right? And I'll second it. All in favor? Aye.
Opposed? No.
No.
Okay, we're okay, so can you, maybe we should have had some discussion after this.
Tony, what do you think? Oh.
What do you propose to?
Well, I think we should just put the whole thing over for the next time, if we're going to do anything. I mean, unless we're going to pass it now, just put the whole thing over.
I could live with that.
Because I don't think you can do a resolution to adopt it, which is partial, and then just carve out one section that you do a second reading on. That's what, I think it would be very difficult to do a resolution. I think you could conveniently adopt that section by resolution when you have the whole section, but I think if you start to parse it and take pieces out, you're going to be basically doing second readings on paragraphs as you go along. So that's my reason, is it's a methodology issue. So I would move to put it over for a reading at the next regular meeting, or whatever is the date of the board's pleasure. And perhaps you would like to
For the sake of
Draft
peace in our
some-
time, I will second that motion.
draft some additional language that we could include, and that will be a first reading. Yes? It'll be the second?
It'll be the third.
No, it'll be the fourth.
Yeah, technically the fourth. but
All right,
fourth.
all right.
I kind of threw that first one out.
Okay.
I second. It has been seconded.
We have that motion clearly.
Motion to put over reading, for a reading at the next regular meeting.
Of section 1000, that's that.
And seconded by Pat, right?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No. He's tough. Well, the motion passes.
Passed.
I may,
Have we adopted the introduction?
disagree with what you say, Chuck, but I'll defend with my life the right to say it.
Thank you.
Do we have any comments on the introduction?
You haven't got to that one yet, no?
I have no comments on the introduction.
I have some comments on the peanut butter.
Comments on the introduction? From the public?
Was the introduction just the same introduction that was there before? I didn't
I
read
think I changed one word that was a typo.
It's actually the same. Thank you for including that.
Any other comments on the introduction? So are we ready to?
I move we adopt the introduction as written.
I second it.
It's already.
Any discussion? All in favor?
It's already adopted.
Oh, I thought we had to vote on the
That's,
introduction.
no, that's the introduction
To the
that somebody asked if we could include it, so it's from the old manual, so it's word for word,
So it
so
said it
I
was
just
the
brought
first
it
reading.
forward.
Okay.
So it's already extant and part of our manual.
So,
So it doesn't need a motion.
I don't think it does, I think it's
so
already
the
part of
only
our
reason I said
manual.
is because the agenda said the first reading of the introduction.
Yeah, I put it on the first reading.
Do you want it that way? Do you want it?
It's safe. Let's,
Did we do any harm by?
we're not going to lose anything by bringing up for second reading next month when we do this thing again.
No, for fifth reading next month.
Fifth reading next month.
Okay, so the motion is still there, right?
All right, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent, the motion passes.
So we adopted the introduction.
Yes. We are at the last agenda item, for the open meeting, that is. Chief, will you please brief the board?
What I'm asking the board is permission to attend the Contra Costa County Police Chiefs Association Post-Certified 214 Chiefs Workshop. It's going to be held November 3rd through 6th, to be held at the Inn of the Tides in Bodega Bay. The cost of my attendance would be $825, which is totally reimbursable by post.
Reimbursable, you mean?
Which is reimbursed.
Reimbursed by post. Reimbursed by post. The 24 hours of post-certified training counts toward my maintaining my post certification, which I'd like to do. The class schedule attached to the memo for your review is a breakdown of what will be discussed during the workshop. And like I said, it's $825. It's reimbursed by post. The fee for the course is incorporated into our, what's it called, the annual, the Belonging Association. So I've already checked out my annual membership in the
So just to be clear here, all we're doing is authorizing time away from work to do this. There's no other dollar cost because Post reimburses the whole thing.
Right, except for the actual portion of the class that's in fee for my membership in the county chiefs.
But that's already built into the budget already.
Yeah, it's already built in and been paid.
There's no upward pressure on the budget as one of our directors wants.
I was hoping Carl would do that, but I'm a little disappointed.
Quick question, if you could tell us what POST stands for, what the acronym is?
Peace Officer Standard and Training.
Standard training?
Standards and Training.
It's a certification level officers have to go through about police training.
Is it done annually?
Pardon me?
Is it done annually?
I think there's annual requirements on hours they have to put in.
Chief, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, every 2 years, police officers have to have a minimum of 24 hours of certified training. Every 3 years, it has to be 40 hours.
All right, we have a motion?
I move we authorize the chief to attend the conference and to pay any costs associated therewith.
The only question I'd ask is, does anybody else in the audience have comments on this? We didn't give you a chance to weigh in, and the board didn't really weigh in except for mine afterwards.
Sorry.
Anybody else have any comments out there?
You mean about the post training?
Yes.
Go for it.
But you have to tell us who Dorner is. Who the heck is Christopher Dorner? Am I just ignorant of the famous case?
He's the ex-LA officer that went on a rampage in LA and shot the other LA officer.
Okay, don't tell us who he is.
Cop on cop violence?
Go ahead.
It sounded like Director Toombs said that basically authorizing time away from work. Does that mean?
It's 3 days off. He has to be at this service,
But
at
we
this
still pay.
event.
Of course he gets.
The chief's contract provides for training necessary for his position.
Yes, we have a second motion, don't we? Motion by Pat, second by Linda. You have that right? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. It appears we're finished. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.